They're coming with more. They're coming with more. Oh, there we go.
It's not going to be a quick meeting.
Hey, Sean.
Excuse me, everyone. The time is now 7:02 p.m. I will now call this special town council meeting of the Bridgewater Town Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's town council meeting is being streamed live via YouTube. Please go to the Town of Bridgewater Facebook page for the link. I do not have any condolences this evening for veterans, but please join me in a moment of silence for all Bridgewater veterans who have passed and for their families. Thank you.
Johnny, before we start, can we just congratulate Paul for getting his PhD today?
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Hunt. So we're very proud of, do we call you Dr. Murphy now? Dr. Murphy, Councilor Murphy, he earned his PhD today in, remind me, with the focus of study again?
Education.
In education. So we're really excited for him. I personally want to congratulate him. I know that he's been doing a lot of work, balancing the work here on the council and the dissertation. So congratulations, Paul. Another round of applause for you. We do not have any minutes from previous meetings, and Councilor Hunt already stole my first announcement.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Just wanted to make sure it happened.
Yes, it's an awesome accomplishment. So I do have a number of president announcements. So I do have a few reminders from our town clerk's office. Firstly, Town Hall will be open tomorrow until 5 p.m. for voter registration, and residents may also complete an in-person absentee voting at that time. For anybody planning to vote by mail, please make sure that your request is submitted before Friday, April 17th. That's this Friday. Once completed, ballots must be returned to Town Hall by 8 p.m. on Election Day. If possible, the drop boxes are the best option rather than relying on the mail, just to make sure that every ballot reaches the town clerk's office and can be counted on time. In-person absentee voting is available now through noon on Friday, April 24th, which is the day before the election. A quick reminder is that this upcoming Monday is Patriots Day, which is a state holiday, so town offices will be closed. And finally, the 2026 street listings will be available for those who are interested. You could purchase a copy starting next week at the town clerk's office for $25. And if anybody wants an electronic version, those are available now by contacting the office and having one emailed to you. Another note is, of course, last Friday, we're all aware that a 2-alarm fire broke out at 7 Crescent Street next to the police station, resulting in heavy flames, vehicle fires, and gas container explosions. 3 residents and multiple cats got out alive, which is great. No one was harmed. There were no fatalities. 2 Good Samaritans, Jamie Marie Sheridan and Eduardo Alvarena, spotted the fire, called 911, and tried to alert the family. Officer Hutchins, who was nearby, arrived and got everybody out safely. And this is the type of courage that we are really fortunate to have here in Bridgewater from not only our police officers, but our civilians. And we're very fortunate to have had that rapid response. Our firefighters, under the direction of Chief Schatz, launched an aggressive attack with mutual aid from 8 surrounding departments. I also wanted to acknowledge that thanks to the Middleborough interconnections we currently have, we sustained our tank levels at a safe level throughout the event. And if that wasn't in place, we could have potentially had to turn on wells 10A and 10B in the past. So this interconnection that we currently have is not just about safe drinking water, but also about public safety as well. I personally wanted to thank our Chief Del Monte, Officer Hutchins, and every firefighter and mutual aid partner on the scene that late evening and early morning, and the 2 civilians, of course, who stopped and intervened. The town owes all of you our gratitude, so thank you for that. And lastly, we do have our town cleanup this Saturday. We're going to organize that through 3 different locations, which we have done in the past. One will be down at the NIP, and Pat Neary, who is a neighbor of mine, is doing a lot of the coordinating efforts there. We'll also be over at Carver's Pond. I personally will be there, and then we're going to call this the downtown cleanup. We're going to meet over at Town River Landing, and then I think that group is going to go kind of along downtown and Broad Street. So if you're interested in participating, just show up to any one of those locations at 10 a.m. this Saturday, and we will go out there and clean up our town. I want to thank Sophia Vitaroni from Bridgewater State University, who's been helping to organize that effort with me. So thank you, Sophia. I also want to thank Mr. Marchand from Marchand Environmental, who's going to donate a dumpster Saturday. So everybody, once we're done cleaning up, we'll meet at Town River Landing, throw our trash into the dumpster, and then there'll be an informal kind of procession afterwards. We're going to have some refreshments. Mr. Carney from the Claremont group reached out and said that he would like to help with that effort and participate. So we're working out some of those details there. So thank you to them for that. And that's all that I have for announcements. We do not have any proclamations. We'll now move on to Citizens Open Forum. Due to Massachusetts open meeting law requirements, discussions will not take place during public comment periods. If appropriate, responses to questions and concerns will be given by the town manager at a future town council meeting. Anyone may come up at this time and comment up to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Janet Hansen, Pleasant Street. I first want to like to thank everybody, the CBC and everyone who had a part in the dedication for Hansen Farm yesterday for conservation restriction, and it was so nice to see everyone, so I wanted to thank you. What I have to talk about tonight is I want to express my disappointment, and not have to, in being selected to serve on the Charter Review Committee. But what is upsetting me more is the lack of communication. I sent in my request on February 12th, never got a receipt, so I said, okay. 4 days later, February 16th, I sent an email to Deb Ward, and she confirmed that, yes, in fact, you did receive it. Okay. No, I know we were waiting, and you only had 2. I think I was like the second person that had applied. I'm not sure exactly. And going forward, last week, it was announced that you reached your 7+, and you would be deciding. I didn't know how that decision was made. I didn't even know about tonight's meeting, and I found out that it's the president of the council is the one who determines who to pick. I was surprised. I think it should be a group effort, or like a committee like other places. It doesn't seem like one person should be deciding and then have the council decide if they agree to it. They didn't get to see the others. But I just didn't get any notification whatsoever that I was even rejected. I didn't get a rejection letter. At least, sorry, thank you for your time, to wanting to commit, but, we have chosen other people, thank you again, blah, 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 blah. Didn't even get that. I didn't even know about, if somebody hadn't told me about this meeting, I wouldn't even seen it. I wouldn't even seen who was on the thing. It would have been very courteous to receive an email. Even if it's a rejection, we should have gotten an email. And that's the most disappointing, as much as I wanted to be on the charter committee. Communication. Would I feel this way if I got on it? Yes, because now I find out how it's done. And I'm sure I would have gotten a notification if I got chosen. I'm hoping they did. But to not get a rejection letter is just as bad. So I really implore you to change that policy. And I still think it shouldn't be just down to one person that picks, and then have you all decide if you want them or not without knowing who the other people were. So, and I know resumes have nothing to do with who you picked, because I saw the people that did, and some people had elaborate and some didn't have anything. So it can't be the resume. So I just want to make sure that common decency to respond to people if they're applying for a committee. I don't know if I'll go through this again, but I just, don't ghost us. So I'm sorry to be negative on that, but don't ghost us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Andy Hoy Thomas, 9 Trinity Circle. I'm here tonight not as a member of school committee, but solely a Bridgewater resident that cares about our town and the multiple issues that we're facing. Looking at the budget, it's clear the problem isn't how big the pie, isn't how the pie is divided. It's simply that the pie is not big enough. I've read through the budget and the Collins Center report being presented tonight, and we are unilaterally running on fumes. I hope all the townspeople realize any cost-saving measures presented at this time will come at a detriment to Bridgewater as a town. Running a fire engine with only 2 firefighters goes against safety standards. Putting newly graduated educators in charge of 36 9-year-olds raises real safety and quality concerns. The Recreation Department is more than just maintenance. It plays an important role in bringing our community together. When we treat it and other departments as just another expense, we overlook their true value. Outsourcing emergency calls to a regionalized civilian call center to save the most money will risk delaying critical life-saving care. Rather than continuing to justify years of minimal investment in our town services, I hope we can come together and focus on growing the pie. It is an investment in the future of our town, and there's simply no other way. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Constance Franchosi, 675 Curve Street. Good evening, councilors and everyone present. As chair of the Bridgewater Library Trustees and speaking on their behalf, I come before you this evening in support of our public library. The Bridgewater Public Library is a true gem of this community. It is the pride and joy of our patrons and citizens, and used by countless individuals. Stop by on any given day, stop by in the morning, and you're going to see many activities going on, individuals reading the newspaper, some people engaged in tutoring activities. Later in the morning, you'll see young children coming in with their caretakers for story time and special programs. And moving into the afternoon, you'll see dozens of middle school and high school students coming into the library to study and hang out with their friends. In short, the library is a gathering space, a welcoming space for all town residents and frankly for other individuals in the Commonwealth. Shortly, you will hear a presentation of the proposed FY27 budget. It will be a somber and disheartening experience to listen because it calls for major cuts in many areas. Sadly, it is a reflection of the harsh financial times that we live in. If the cuts proposed to the library by the budget come to pass, the services we have come to enjoy and rely on will no longer be provided in the way that they have been in the past. Recently, the library has had to close on Saturday due to a lack of staffing. This has not been a popular decision, but it is one that will continue and may also result in the closing of an additional day if the operating budget is severely cut. This will have a snowball effect. With the library open for far fewer hours than is mandated by law, this will jeopardize the continuation of state aid and the continuation of certification as a library. Bridgewater has been down the road of decertification before. It was not a pleasant experience. Patrons were no longer able to access interlibrary loan, and they were not able to use other public libraries in the Commonwealth. The bar to recertify again is a high one, and it is dependent on the town's willingness to financially support the library. Our role as trustees, as outlined in the town charter, is to ensure that the citizens of Bridgewater have access and free use to their library. Deep cuts in the operating budget of the library will seriously impact our ability to carry out that mission. As fellow elected officials, we implore you, members of the town council, to seriously and closely examine this budget and be creative, think out of the box, so that we can ensure that the massive cuts to the library and the resulting ramifications as they play out will not come to pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys doing? Brad McKinnon, 86 Spring Street. First, just want to thank the 4 counselors that went to Middleborough during the water meeting. Even if you didn't speak, it just speaks volumes showing up with everything we got going on in town. When it comes to the CRC committee, I was just told by not a counselor, but just apply with your name and say you were interested. If I knew I had to write a resume, because I'm just saying, Janet, I'm one of the ones that don't have that. I'm just saying, I was going to say it anyways. I would have wrote out that resume, all that, but there were many reasons why I did resign, and the charter had something to do with it, so I definitely know a few problems in there, and I mean, it's not, we've all argued with the shall definition, there's plenty of things wrong with that, so we'll definitely look into it if I get appointed. 100% committed to that, because it does need a lot of work, in my opinion. Paul, congratulations on the doctor, that's awesome. I know that was, you weighed a lot on you at points when we were on rules and procedures and all that in the past. And Johnny did just bring up the Town River Landing cleanup, and I just want to bring up First Responders Day is also on Election Day. And I mean, you guys see what these 2 chiefs back here do. They run their departments well. I mean, I wasn't there for the 7 Crescent Lane fire, but I was going to get a part for one of my dad's machine once and got stuck in the parking lot because I was going to call the fire in, and they showed up and the hoses. I got to watch them work. He's awesome. He's great. I'm not saying you're not, Del Monte, but I was there. I got to watch Slats go in and make the defensive call, which was a right call on said property down there. Summer Street Park, kind of wondering what's going on there. I mean, nothing has since I said, why is this company sitting here for 3 weeks, and then they disappeared 2 days later, so I don't know, something's going on there. Styles and Hard, I'm gonna constantly complain about bottom of the hill, no curb cuts, looks like crap, blah, blah, blah. That's the entrance to the town, we're trying to pretty it up, that's why we passed the form-based code, blah, blah, blah. There's so much, every time I come up here I forget. I was better on that side, I swear. Guess that'll be it for me tonight, but I did just want to bring up how, if I knew I should have done the resume and made it look more professional, I would have, but I think most people in town do know I know the charter, or at least you're supposed to when you sit on that side, so. Yet again, congratulations, Paul, and if I'm here this weekend, I'll see you on Saturday at the Town River Landing to clean up the town. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up and speak?
Good evening, Bob Cormier, 65 Grange Park. I just rolled my ankle getting up, so Dr. Murphy, I need you to take a look at that. Thank you, sir. Just a couple comments on the budget. I know this is going to be a lively and in-depth discussion. Hopefully we can get some clarity on a few things. The CED department, which is brought up almost every meeting, is taking a large hit, mainly to the director, and a 13% salary reduction. So just want to get some clarity on what the plan is for that department. And as bleak as the budget is, there's still some risk that obviously you can see. So There's 3% increase for fire. That's in arbitration. What happens if that comes back higher than that? Do we have a contingency? Is there a reserve for that? Is that a mid-year supplemental? Same with local receipts. It's a very aggressive forecast. If we don't meet that forecast, how are we going to make up that gap? Obviously, the glaring school funding gap, are $2.7 million off of what the school committee asked for. The town manager mentioned if we close the library, lose 9 police officers, 9 firefighters, we're still short. This is clearly a revenue problem, and we need to say it out loud that right now we're sending a message that our kids in this community are the second least value to their community and anywhere in the Commonwealth. That's just a fact, and I think we need to recognize that. Where's the revenue going to come from? Along those lines, we know we can't grow revenue because we're limited with infrastructure, so where are the programs that are helping us grow our businesses within our existing infrastructure to help create new revenue? Again, it's bleak across the board, but I think we're at a point we need to be asking if every dollar is invested in the right place. I'm at a point where I'm looking at the lesser of 10 evils, basically, of where we need to allocate money. You know, do we need 13 administrative office and executive assistants totaling $750K? You know, I work for an organization of 1,000 people that has $250 million of revenue. We have 2. Can that be consolidated? Can we use a shared service? Is that money better spent with more classroom teachers, more firefighters, more police officers? It's not for me to decide. I'm just hopeful that you all take that type of critical lens. And I think every member of the community should be asking these questions, but I definitely don't envy you all in this budget discussion tonight, but those are just some of the questions I hope we can hear addressed. So, thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up and speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. Dennis Gallagher, State Rep for the town of Bridgewater. Good evening, council members. I wanted to come here tonight just to give a brief update on some of the activities that I've been working with the town manager and his team on regarding the water situation. And there has been a lot of moving parts since I was here last a few months ago. And I hope to come back in a couple of weeks to talk about the budget, simply because the House will be debating that budget the week after next, and the House will be releasing their budget tomorrow. So we will know what the cherry sheet looks like tomorrow, but then we debate it in a couple of weeks. But tonight I want to talk about some efforts to help the town through this water supply emergency. As you know, a couple months ago, I came here with Senator Driscoll to confirm that we have received the $2 million, we have been earmarked $2 million to help the town out during this emergency. Initially, I thought that that money could have been used to help with the cost associated with the tie-in, emergency tie-in with Middleborough, but that's not the case. That $2 million is specifically for permanent infrastructure upgrades for the town. And the town manager and his team have been putting together requests and what their plan is to DEP, and there's been some revisions back and forth, but that's what's happening with that $2 million. I have also been in contact with DEP and Senator Driscoll regarding potential disaster relief money that could help the town with costs associated with the tie-in and the water bills we've been getting through Middleborough. So that's in the queue as well. Last week, we took up a supplemental budget, and I requested the town manager in both towns, remember I have the town of Rainham as well, to send me some of your priorities I can put in for education and transportation. And I put in 2 amendments. One was for a request for the town manager, asked me to put in about $250,000 for the Bridgewater Middle School water filter system. So I put that I got $50,000 approved for that, and I got $50,000 approved for the school for their lighting and security. Senator Driscoll, the senators get more money. The Senator Driscoll was able to add $50,000 to that water filtration system for the Bridgewater Middle School. So the cost that we got from the town manager was $250,000. That was built into the capital budget. You won't need to use that. This is going to happen, so that will go towards that infrastructure improvement at the middle school. What could happen with the 250 that's in capital is we could take that out and apply it towards a future project for water, but that's an internal decision. I also sent a letter of support with the town for $1 million in federal assistance through Congressman Keating's office, and we should get those, that result by the summer, by the end of June or July, we hope. So those are some things that I think are sure things that are going to happen for the town. But there are some things that are in the queue as well. I know that now that we are an MBTA community compliant town, I just want you guys to know that if you were to approve a water a ban or water moratorium, or even a building moratorium, it would not affect any grant money that you apply for through the MBTA Community Pact. It would not. There may be some questions if there is a development within that zone. Remember, the MBTA community is just a zone. It's not the whole town, it's just that zone. There may be questions, but I don't think it will not affect it. That leading to the one-stop program, which is very important to MBTA communities, and that's run by the Executive Office of Livable Communities. And the town manager and his team have been diligently looking at that program to apply for grant monies that will help us with our water infrastructure improvements. And that's very, very important. We will be taking up that the Senate is taking up an environmental bond bill right now as we speak and tomorrow. I, again, sent a request to the town manager and to my counterpart in Rainham and said, what do you guys need me to put into the environmental bond bill? And I did get a $2.5 million request from the town manager to put into this bond bill when we get it. Senator Driscoll is aware of it as well, for water infrastructure improvements. Let's just hope that we will be put in that bond. That's not guaranteed money. Remember, it's in a bond. The bonds are, as the town manager knows, he worked at the State House, a bond program is a little different than grants and a supplemental budget. A bond it could be in the bond, then trying to get it out is where we got to collaborate. We love that word, don't we? Collaborate in this town with BSU, the MCI, and other partners to say, hey, we need your letters of support to try to draw down that money. So that's down the road. So I just want you to be aware of those things that are happening at the state level. I'm very pleased that we're able to cover the water filtration system at the Bridgewater Middle School, and the $1 million that we hope to get from the federal government very soon for the town. I think that will be very helpful. Sure enough, there's a lot more that we're going to need, and there's a lot more that I'm advocating as much as I can and will continue to do, in addition to other responsibilities. But I am on top of what the town can do and what I can do on Beacon Hill to help with that. So I just wanted you to be aware of the environmental bond bill is a very important piece, because every legislator is going to be asking for some of that money. So I think that that's important. So I don't want to take too much of your time. So I know to be back in a couple of weeks, maybe to talk about the budget and other things that are going on. So I will stay for the rest of the meeting, though I do want to listen to the budget presentation, because I hope that we make some progress and help you guys out, particularly the schools and other areas with the House budget. I want to congratulate too, Councilor Murphy. It means you get to go out and change all your lawn signs in the next couple of weeks, right? And I want to wish everyone that's on the ballot, I don't think I'll be here next week, I want to wish everybody that's on the ballot the best of luck, those that are running and those that are here seeking to stay on the board. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if no one else would like to come up and speak, we'll now move into our next section. All right, great. So we're now moving into appointments. So we do have the Charter Review Committee appointment ratifications this evening. We do have 7 folks that were up for appointment. We did receive multiple applications, and we received very, very qualified applications. I'm not sure how this was 6 years ago, but the applications we received were very impressive. And these 7 folks are up for appointment tonight. And the reason why we didn't send out letters to people that aren't on this ratification list this evening is in the event that we don't ratify all 7 of these appointments, then there would be other folks put up in their place potentially. So first up, we have...
Point of order.
Sure.
I would like to have this continued so that all of us counselors can see the full list of people that applied. And so I would like to continue this for another week so that that can be disclosed to the full council, so that it's not a decision made by one person.
It's not a decision by one person, it's a decision by 8 of us. We are going to go appointment by appointment. If you don't feel comfortable with the person who's up for that appointment, then we just vote no and don't ratify them. Do we take a motion to continue all of these?
Yeah, if you have a second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on?
Just one quick comment. I think Josh had sent out all the applicants today to the full council, so I know I had sent an email, but I think that did go out, just so you know, Councilor Allenberg, just
Okay.
today, that got sent out to all of us.
All right. I did not see it, and I'll have to go back and look at it. I do think we need to see the full list and everyone's qualifications.
Any further discussion?
I did want to just express my disappointment that Janet Hansen isn't on the list. I think she's a very dedicated citizen and a very qualified applicant. I wish the process was different, where all of us had any kind of a stake in this.
Yeah, and like I previously said, I think that we all have the ability to vote, and if we don't want to ratify someone, then we just say no. I think that we have had many people who are very well qualified, folks who have served on this charter review committee before. I would love to have all of them on this committee, speaking frankly, but we could only have 7, and the list that is before us is a mixture of people who have done this before, people that have experience, and people who don't have experience. We have a mixture of people that are new to this process, a little bit newer to town, some former counselors. So this was the list that's put forward before us. But we could continue to have this discussion if we want to continue it or not. No further discussion? So let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Josh, could we do that, please? And by the way, thank you, Josh, for stepping in for Deb Ward. We appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Yeah, of course.
Just point of information, what exactly are we voting on?
I believe Councilor Ellenberg asked to take a
Continue for
motion
a
to postpone,
Postpone
or rather
for a week.
continue every single one of these. Does this have to be individual motions to our town council, or this can be for all of them?
It's up to her motion. I'm not sure. I think it sounded to me like her motion was to continue all of them.
Yes.
So you would just have to state the date certain in which you want to continue it to?
Next week?
Okay.
Just to follow that up for information purposes, once this is filled out, if, say, there's 7 slots, one person is voted down, we have no ability to add them at a later date, correct?
I think you could. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if one is voted down and you don't fill all 7 slots, it can come on a subsequent agenda wherein you look to appoint someone else to make sure that you fit all 7 spots with someone.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking for myself, if we don't fill all 7, then we would have somebody else in their stead next week.
Sure, I'm just trying to make sure all the information is there before we do vote.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else?
I'll just add that if it does get continued, I think we should have the background information of all potential candidates available to us for the future meeting as well. Either those on the list or not on the list. Again, just based on requests from certain counselors.
Sure.
I think Councilor Murphy said it. I think we did get that today in our email, so we will be able to look at I know the other 5 names, and there were resumes there as well, so.
Yeah, all that information was set out. Like I said, I think that we take these one at a time, but it's obviously the will of the council. So if no one has any further discussion, we could go to a roll call vote. Josh, please.
Councilor Kennedy?
No.
Councilor Ellenberg?
Yes.
Councilor McGrath?
No.
Councilor Loretti?
No.
Councilor Perry?
No.
Councilor Murphy?
No.
Councilor Hunt?
No.
Councilor Lindy?
No.
Thank you. With a vote of 7 no and 1 yay, the motion failed.
Okay, so we can move on to our first appointment then. We have first Mr. Ed Ivaldi. Do I have a motion for an approval of this seat and a second for discussion?
So moved.
A motion, and do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any discussion on Mr. Ivaldi's appointment? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, motion carries.
Point of order also, I think it would be nice if we took roll call votes on all of the candidates, because this charter approval is so important that we would want people to be accountable for who's appointed.
Sure, yeah, we could do that. I didn't do a roll call because there was no discussion, but we could do a roll call. So moving forward, we have Scott Pitta. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yes. So moved. Second.
And a second, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Lindy,
Yes.
Counselor Hunt,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Loretti,
Yes.
Counselor McGrath,
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. Moving on, we have Lindsay Marshall. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on Lindsay's appointment? Okay, seeing none, maybe do a roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg,
No.
Counselor McGrath,
Yes.
Counselor Loretti,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Hunt,
No.
Counselor Lindy.
No.
Thank you. With a vote of 5 yea and 3 nay, the motion was approved.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Jean D. Batista. Do we have a motion to approve this appointment?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made, thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on Jean's appointment? Okay, seeing none, may you do a roll call, please?
Counselor Lindy,
Yes.
Counselor Hunt,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Loretti,
Yes.
Counselor McGrath,
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. Next, we have James Walsh. Do I have a motion to approve James' appointment?
Moved.
Second.
Motion made and a second. Any discussion? Okay,
Is this individual with BCCR?
No.
No.
sorry?
This is the young man that comes and addresses the council during citizens' comments quite a bit.
Okay, my mistake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Josh.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg,
Yes.
Counselor McGrath,
Yes.
Counselor Loretti,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Hunt,
Yes.
Counselor Lindy.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. Next up for our sixth spot, we have Eric Diaz. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Motion made
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on Eric's appointment?
I think he is extremely well qualified as an engineer and would be a tremendous help to our town in general.
I would agree. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Lindy,
Yes.
Counselor Hunt,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Loretti,
Yes.
Counselor McGrath,
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. And for our last seat, we have Brad McKinnon. Do I have a motion to approve Brad's appointment to the seat?
A motion to approve.
Motion made
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, let me do one last roll call, please.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Ellenberg,
No.
Counselor McGrath,
Yes.
Counselor Loretti,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Hunt,
No.
Counselor Lindy.
Yes.
Thank you. With a vote of 6 yea and 2 nay, the motion was approved.
Great. Thank you to everybody who applied. Honestly, it was a very large and very qualified group. And thank you to those who have been appointed. We look forward to all the hard work that you're going to be doing. And we did have a resolution last week that we talked about to how we're going to handle this process moving forward and how we're going to get those recommendations through rules and procedures into the council. So I look forward to a productive session, if you will, of the Charter Review Committee. So thank you, everybody, for that. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
What happens if anybody does decline?
So then we would then bring their appointment back up. And I don't know if we would do that formally. We would do that formally through a council meeting, yes?
Yeah, if someone declines, then what I would say, probably the next step would be, you would just follow the charter, you would appoint a new person, and that person would be subject to ratification by you all.
Great. And I think that happened last time around for an appointment.
It does happen, yeah. It's fine. Really, their only time limits are based on when the committee is formed as a whole and the amount of time they have to give you recommendations. So long as you create a full committee at some point, that'll kind of start their clock from when their review has to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we do not have any hearings or license transactions. We'll now move on to presentations. We have the Collins Center presenting on the staffing study presentation.
I'll have our HR director introduce the representative from the Collins Center.
Hi. So I have the pleasure of introducing Phil Lemnios. He's with the Collins Center. We've been working with him since the fall to pull together this staffing study. He's done the lion's share of the work with our department heads and culling through data. So I'll let him come up and tell you a little bit about himself and present the report to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to address the council. My name is Phil Lemnios. I'm a retired town manager, served here in Massachusetts for over 30 years in 3 different communities. So I started many years ago, 1988, as an assistant to the mayor for the city of Attleboro, which was a grant-funded position by Division of Local Services to bring professional management into communities. I have a master's degree in public administration, as well as a certificate of special studies from Harvard University on management and that kind of thing. From Attleboro, I became the town manager in Hull, Mass. In 1992. Served there for approximately 10 years in that position. That's a strong town manager form of government in that particular community. And then from there, I went to the town of Natick for about 5 years, and then was asked to return to Hull by the select board in Hull, and I accepted that appointment and finished my career in Hull. During the course of my career, I served on a variety of state and federal boards. Most significantly, I was one of the founding members of the South Shore Regional Emergency Communications Center, which was the first or second regional dispatch center in the state that serves 4 communities. Served as the chair of that board for 2012 until I retired a couple of years ago. And also served in some federal boards that had to do with Boston Harbor and Islands and so forth. This particular engagement was a very interesting engagement for me because I got a chance to meet not only your town manager and your human resource director, but your department heads. And the process that we went through and the purpose of the engagement, and it kind of grew over time in terms of as I started getting into it, but the initial purpose was to kind of look under the hood, give a report that kind of indicates to you as town leaders and staff, what's the state of affairs of the operations of the town? Are you adequately staffed? Are you understaffed? Or what are some of the horizon issues that you may be confronting? And I think that when you go through the report, there's probably not a lot of surprises in the report from your perspective, but it's an outside review and an impartial review of kind of the status of operations here in the community. And, it's kind of interesting to me that, I'm here on a budget night. It brings back both good and bad memories, so my commiserations, Mr. Town Manager and members of the Town Council. It's a very difficult time to be involved in local government in Massachusetts, so the members of the community probably don't fully appreciate the efforts that all you folks put in to your positions and the amount of diligence that you put toward your positions. You all share one thing in common. You want to make Bridgewater a community that's great to live in and that's great to raise a family in and that's a wonderful place to be. But you all, I'm sure, have different perspectives on how to go about accomplishing that. And that's the pull and the tug of local government. And it's really the last place, local government's really the last place where you as a citizen or anybody in this room as a citizen can come and approach their government directly and say, this is what I think and this is what I want to have happen. It's not abstract, it's direct. So you're in a very, very dynamic environment. As I commence this review, I talked a little bit about the purpose, which was to kind of do an assessment of all the town departments, not the school departments, so these are just general government departments. Identify staffing, resource, and process strengths. The objective was to provide you, the town leadership, and the administrative leadership of the community with information that has got some data behind it. So it's not just kind of perceptions, and it's not something that is just the way people may feel or observational. There is some data, and as you go through the report, you know, we tried to find data that was comparative data with other communities that are similarly situated to your community. And the report covers your public safety departments, the human services departments, regulatory, economic development, public works, finance, and technology, and town clerk. The methodology I did an interview and conducted discussions with the department heads and walked through kind of what they were experiencing and asked a whole series of questions. I asked them to provide to me operational data for the period of 2022 through 2024 so that we could get kind of a little bit of a trend of what's going on in the departments. And then where I could find benchmarking information relatively easily and directly, I tried to get that information and put that into the report. So you'll see that not every department has benchmarking information, but the major ones do. There's some information on public safety that has some benchmarking information, public library, I know that one of the trustees was here this evening, veterans, so forth and so on. So my first impression is that you are very fortunate to have a highly dedicated staff. Your department heads, your manager, your human resource director, everybody I interacted with knew what their function was, were very dedicated in their position. I heard on many occasions folks saying that we have increasing demand and that is impacting their personal lives to the extent of things like they're not able to take their full vacation, they're not able to take a break and think about big picture issues because they're really pressed with what's happening operationally in their departments. But you have a very effective staff, and I think you can see that when you look at kind of some of the data in the report. The departments are pressed, and there is an increasing demand for services, and there's also an increasing demand externally that is impacting the departments. So for instance, in your public safety departments, the Post Commission that was established by the state has added a whole new level of certification requirements, educational and training requirements that the police chief and his command staff have to address within the existing confines of the budget. On the fire side, you're doing a reallocation of the way departments, the stations are handled within the community, which is changing run cards. It's changing, you know, the amount of time it's going to take to get to certain portions of the community. But on top of that, you know, when you look at, for instance, the paramedic service, which is an outstanding service, and it's, you know, paramedic service is really what communities need because it really makes a significant difference in the quality of care that somebody receives between the time they call for 911, your paramedics arrive, and the time they arrive at a medical facility. That window of time can be very, very determinative as to what happens to that person long term. But the requirements to have paramedics on staff, there's a whole series of training requirements. There's a whole series of requirements that impact the budget. And in order to maintain the license to operate a paramedic service, there's a whole built-in infrastructure that just has to be maintained. So when you look at your public safety departments and you look at what's happening there. There's an increase in volume of demand for police, in the police and fire department. There are staffing levels that are actually below what's happening with peer communities, and that's in the report. You can see what your staffing is relative to peer communities. And there are some opportunities, and I know when I had this discussion, I know with the police chief or the fire chief, the conversation about looking at dispatch and so forth. And I'm not going to get too deep into each one of these departments because I know your time is a bit limited, but you'll see also with fire, you've got a rising emergency volume call. You've got staffing below safety standards, NFPA safety standards, increasing reliance on mutual aid. You know, with police and fire, as a matter of fact, with many town departments, technology is not going to necessarily lead to a change in productivity. With police and fire, what technology will do is provide the responders with better information when they respond. But you still need to have a certain number of police officers in a community if you want to keep the community safe. You still need to have a certain number of firefighters / paramedics in a community if you want to have response times that are adequate and appropriate. So when you look at many local government departments, a lot of folks will say, well, you know, we can employ technology, and technology is going to lead to a smaller head count on departments. On your front-facing departments, that really isn't going to happen. It will lead to better outcomes when somebody visits those departments, but it will not change the fact that you still need somebody to service the resident who has a demand. Technology is not going to change the fact that you do not have enough van drivers at the Council on Aging, you know, to help people get to a supermarket or get to medical appointments. It may help in the way in which those appointments are made. It may help you to do a better job at, you know, dispatching those appointments or collating how those appointments are addressed. But when you look at front-facing departments, technology will help, but it is not going to be something that is going to dramatically change the manner in which the service is delivered. On some of the operations that are not front-facing, on finance and so forth, technology absolutely can help from a productivity standpoint. So for instance, you know, probably one of the easiest ways to look at it is, you know, years ago, every paycheck was cut as a handheld paycheck, a hard paycheck and so forth, and now you know, most of them are electronically delivered and so forth. So, so when you look at your front-facing operations, and those are the operations in every city and town that are the ones that the citizens most frequently come into contact with. In order to have quality, in my opinion, you will not be able to cut your way to quality. It just doesn't, it won't happen. If you want to maintain quality, you have to invest in quality. And that decision is obviously the citizens of the community and you folks as the town council, because everybody who works for Bridgewater is a public servant. Servants typically don't dictate and determine what the staffing in a household are. They're servants. You folks have to kind of come up with a solution set as to what you want the household to look like. And the residents in the community have to also come to that determination. And I say that because, again, I kind of have a really good understanding of looking at the audience and people kind of previewing the budget. And you know, when you look at a municipal budget, because I've been exactly where this gentleman has been sitting, where I had to present budget A, B, and C, closing a library, doing this, doing that in 2012. It's not a fun position to be in. And when everything is said and done, a lot of people believes that you can cut your way to quality, and that, in my estimation, is not going to happen. You need to make some decisions as to just what the nature of your services are going to be. When you get to community services, the Council on Aging, you've got a very competent Council on Aging director, in my estimation. Not a lot of backup or depth in that department. That's a department, if you look at the demographics of your community, about 30% of the community within about 5 or 6 years, it's in the report, will be 65 plus. And if you just look at the demographics over time, it's going to be an increasing segment of your population. The department not only services elders in the community, but is a de facto, just a human services operation in general. So if there's somebody who's 45 who may need food aid or other services, Council on Aging helps out on that. Again, the big issue that I kept confronting when I talked to folks and then began to look at metrics isn't that you've got very competent people. They know what they're doing. They are really trying very hard to do a great job. But at some point, that is confronted by just resources. And that's the decision point that's confronting the community. And Bridgewater's not alone in that. There are many communities in Massachusetts are having this very same discussion across the board. Lots of different reasons for it, but in my professional experience, identifying why something is happening is fine, but if it's external, meaning, well, the state's not giving enough state aid, or the federal government stopped funding this, that, or the other thing, that's great to identify what that is, but that's not necessarily a solution. That's just identifying what the problem is. The real question is what is going to be your solution? Because if you look at over time, and I used to present this chart in Hull and at every place I worked, state assistance to cities and towns over a 20-year period just look at the trend line, it's a constant decline. So there is a greater burden placed on local taxpayers today than it was 20 years ago. There has, as a percentage of overall expenditures, state aid has declined to probably 23% of local communities' budgets. It used to be much higher than that. When I first started in 1988, it was upwards of 40%. So there's no question when people say to you they're feeling pressure, they're having difficulty making paying their taxes, that's absolutely correct. There's also no doubt that the ability to generate local revenue and change the revenue matrix is constrained not only by Prop 2.5, but by other things. So this is, you're at your position in terms of my opinion is you're in a similar boat as many other communities, but you're not worse off than many other communities. You've got some work to do, and if you take advantage of this window to do it and to kind of figure out a way in which you can pivot out of the position you're in, and there's some strategies that I'm sure the town manager and others will promote, you'll be able to do that. If you allow yourself to slide backwards and lose any momentum that you have, to reestablish momentum is very, very difficult, and I've had that experience professionally. Because good employees will begin to look elsewhere. Services that are greatly diminished are very hard to reestablish, and it's a real conundrum that you need to kind of address. In terms of veteran services, you've got a great veterans agent. You got one person. If you look at the portion, Bridgewater has a 51% higher veterans density than the state average. Only 22% receive monetary benefits compared to 32.1% in neighboring communities. The average monthly benefit here in Bridgewater is lower than in other communities. Part of the challenge that gentleman has is there's one. He's a force, an army of one. And so that's why, you look in the report, and this was also kind of a consistent theme in the report. You have several very critical departments where you basically are completely reliant upon one person. And if that one person retires, gets hit by a bus, decides to move on, you're going to have a gap in your operations until that replacement is available. And that will have a significant impact on the services that citizens receive. So if this veterans agent if your veterans agent were for some reason, not available for an extended period of time, where do the veterans in the community go that may need services? This is part of the problem is there's not a lot of opportunities for succession planning. And in some of your departments, that becomes critical. If you look at finance departments, it's very difficult to find municipal finance folks. If you talk to anybody in local government, you ask them, well, how did it go when you started to search for, a town accountant? Very small candidacy pools that you get, and because it's not the same as being a CPA in the private sector. It's a whole different construct. It's a whole different type of training. It's not analogous. You cannot take a CPA or an accountant from a private sector position and put them into a municipal accounting position and have them hit the ground running. It just doesn't. They're completely different systems and different sets of laws that they operate and so forth. So when you look at some of your departments, I think you need to begin to think about some succession planning, some continuity issues, because when you're that dependent on one person in a department, first of all, it's not healthy for that one person. They have very limited opportunity to take a break. But just as importantly, it's not healthy for the community, because if that one person were not available, you're going to have this gap in services. Library is a similar thing. You've got a great library, very dynamic operation. When you look at the library and the comparators in the report on the library, you can see that you have people that are really doing more with less. Public libraries, I think it was referenced by the trustee, and I agree with the sentiment that they're more than just a library. They're actually a very dynamic social gathering spot for communities. A lot of things happen in libraries beyond just simply selecting a book to read or selecting a media to read. And so it's something you need to look at and so forth. And I know that your time is limited, so I'm kind of going through. Park and Rec, this was a very interesting department because it is not a traditional model for a park and rec. It seemed to be completely maintenance focused. There was not a lot of programming that I could identify. Most communities will have a park and rec department that has a maintenance component, or the maintenance component is under Public Works, and it's really more focused on delivery of programming. And there's some ways in which you can make that budget neutral, or certainly very close to budget neutral through fee systems and so forth. But when I looked at your park and rec operation, I really felt it was a park and rec maintenance division. It did not offer programming as far as I could see. And I would note that my understanding is the report was circulated to department heads before it was finalized, not for department heads to comment on the recommendations or anything of that nature. That wasn't the purpose. I simply wanted the department heads to verify any metrics that were in the report. If there were any kind of, but the department head did not have the ability, nor did staff have the ability to change any recommendations or anything of that nature. In terms of the regulatory departments, again, when you look at the building department is basically a one-person show. That's very problematic. It's hard to get qualified building officials. You should have, in my estimation, an assistant building commissioner that would be there to backstop the building commissioner on vacations, on other periods of time, as well as if your building commissioner were to phase out of the picture, you'd have somebody in place to grow into that position. Having building permits issued effectively and efficiently, especially if they're complex permits that require a lot of review, that's a big time sinkhole for any building commissioner. You really don't want those reviews to be rushed. You really want them to be comprehensive because the building commissioners are dealing almost to a large extent with life safety issues. So having adequate staffing in the building department isn't just about zoning issues and so forth. Those are important, but the primary function of a building official is to ensure that the life safety issues associated with buildings are completely covered, whether it be new construction, renovation of existing buildings, or complaints about buildings that a building official may need to visit to determine if there is a life safety issue. Public Works Highway Division is a division that, again, I know that the water and the sewer portions of public safety are something that's of great concern, and it is the focus of a lot of attention in the community. My impression there is that you're getting in place the team that's going to be able to move that forward. I obviously I cannot and will not speak about what went on in the past. All I can tell you is going forward, I had a very clear sense that there is a coalescing of putting the team together that will be able to address some long-standing issues. But that's a very capital-intensive, water and sewer is incredibly capital-intensive. And so that needs to be obviously addressed as you move forward. You've got, as noted in the report, there's infrastructure challenges, aging infrastructure. You've got constraints on your wastewater system, which constrains your economic development opportunities. There are, I know, investments and upgrades happening. You heard from the state representative recently, just a few moments ago, that your legislative team is working hand in hand with your administrative team, and I'm sure the council, to try to find opportunities to help finance the issues that are associated with water and wastewater. This, by the way, I know that one thing about Massachusetts, every community thinks they're unique. You're not. If you look at wastewater as an issue, for instance, a lot of communities took advantage in the mid-'70s of the wastewater funding that was coming out of Washington that put in place a lot of wastewater systems across the country. And those systems are now 30, 40, 50 years old. And so there's a lot of capital upgrade going on wastewater systems across the Commonwealth and across the country, because there is every expectation. Most people don't even think about it, that when I flush the toilet, something positive will happen and this will go away. And so it's a system that needs to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, forever. And there's not only a collection component that has its own unique infrastructure needs, but there is also a component for treatment, which, again, is an example of an increasingly regulated operation that is ever more expensive for communities. So if you look at what treatment looked like 25 or 30 years ago, and you look at the regulations associated with treatment 25 or 30 years ago, it's very different than it is today. It's much more expensive today in terms of regulatory compliance. It's much more expensive today in terms of types of treatment that the communities are putting in place and so forth. So many external factors that are beyond the control of the local community are pushing the cost for local government. And those factors have to be addressed and they have to be met. And the burden does fall on, unfortunately, on the local resident. It's not a shared burden. Part of it is shared burden across the Commonwealth or across the country, but there is an increasing burden on the local resident. So when I talk to folks in your financial services department, again, great leadership, really working well together. There's a few tweaks I recommended in there. There's some issues. There are some operations that are going on in the financial service division that I think could be better suited for the human resource division. So I don't think, as a matter of practice, you should have somebody in the finance division explaining to employees what their benefits may be under a contract, under a union contract, or just general benefits under your human resource bylaws that you may have. That really should all be coming out of the human resource department, so that there's one message and one point of contact with the employee. So that would be an example where you might shift some staffing from the financial division or do some realignment of that staffing to address that. But by and large, your financial operations, I think, are being done very competently. I would note that in the report, I don't know if the report that you may have, which I think was a couple of days ago, there is a change in the assessor section. I did some updates. I was contacted by the assessor and staff and saying, look, we think there's some numbers here that don't make sense to us. So we took a look at that, and we actually updated as late as 3 o'clock this afternoon. So it will be on the new version that's out tomorrow. The single largest thing on that, it's on page 52 to 50, that section's 52 to 55 of the report, is that your growth year over year is positive, not negative. So you might have seen that in the report and said, oh, what's going on there? So we just double check that. And that's, again, kind of what we asked department heads to do, is just take a look at numbers, take a look at anything that's factual in the report, nothing that's editorial, nothing that is recommendation, but just make sure the facts of the report are accurate and are in line with their understanding of their departments. Human Resources, an active department. You can see that, they're constantly trying to recruit folks. There's quite a bit of activity with unions. Obviously, you've got, 5 or 6 unions that you're dealing with. Those are all very important in the way in which a community is managed, because that puts some guardrails in place as to what management can and cannot do with the workforce. And so having competent human resource management is very, very important, and having support for that operation. Because again, if you look at most of your departments, if you look at police and fire, over 90% of the budget is staff. If you look at most of your departments, it's primarily staff. And so having effective human resource management is very, very important, and having the human resource department having adequate support and resources is very important, because if you look at the totality of your budget on the general government side, and on the school side it's similar, it's about 85% of their budget staff. The bulk of the taxpayer dollar that is being spent is directly related to people that you've hired to do the job. And again, that's because technology is not going to replace a police officer responding to a burglary call, or the fire that you had a few days ago. You could see how labor intensive that fire was, even to the point where you had to call in neighboring communities to assist. So when you have emergencies and things of that nature, there just needs to be people that will respond. Information technology, the support tickets have tripled between 2023 and 25. Again, when you look at information technology, it's an interesting environment and a difficult environment, I think, for IT directors, because unlike some other environments, they have a gradation of user experience and expectation. So there are some folks that are required to use the system that may not have a great deal of understanding of how the system operates, and so you need to make sure that the way in which they are interacting with whatever technology that they're using is intuitive, is something that's relatively easy for them to utilize, and that allows them to be productive with the utilization of that technology. There's other elements of the system. If you look at police and fire, their technology has to operate, again, flawlessly, because there's great liability if it doesn't. When you look at, Council on Aging, as an example, their technology has multiple layers of interaction. They've got an interaction with administration. They have to put their payroll in. They have to put their purchase orders in. But at the same time, they also have to be recording statistics for the state and case management data and so forth. So the technology department, when I saw the support tickets increasing the way they're increasing, and without really any change in staffing, it means that they're really, again, they're up against it. This is a critical element of your operation, and again, it's another one of those systems that there's a complete expectation when the user sits down at their desk in the morning, they're going to be able to send out an email, or they're going to be able to do whatever they need to do, and you only realize how kind of stranded on an island you are when it doesn't work. So, when you look at your IT department, I think it's like many IT departments and municipalities, it deserves more attention and it deserves adequate resources if you want to kind of continue just meeting the baseline. And so that's not talking about, changing the, it's really just saying that you outstripped your current baseline with the size of your department. Town clerk department, again, town clerks all across the Commonwealth, all across the country have had a whole change in the way in which elections are organized. They've had a whole change in the way information is expected to be delivered, how quickly results are expected to be delivered. But, the biggest thing is really around elections and early voting and all that's associated with that. I was very fortunate in Hull to work with a town clerk who I think was fabulous, and very, very competent and gave me a great education on kind of everything that began to change with COVID and that is still kind of with us now. A lot of the system changes that were put in place to address voting during COVID are still very much in place now, and it's placed a whole new demand on town clerks' offices. So technology can help, for instance, in that division to some extent, but on election day, you still need people there. You need to check people in. You need, the whole election process that you folks have witnessed firsthand. So the key takeaway, which is I don't think is or should not be a big surprise to you folks, is that you have rising service demands. Unfortunately, that service demand is coming at the same time that you have a strain on resources. And that's obviously what the discussion is on the budget in the next month or so, or however long you discuss budget here. And it's probably going to continue beyond that. But for those folks that think that you can kind of cut your way out of this, in my humble opinion, I've been through that many times in my career, and I can tell you municipal budgets are not particularly different from community to community. When you look at a police or fire department budget, they may difference in size, but the way in which a police and fire department budget is constructed here is pretty much the same as it's constructed in many other communities. There's a built-in level of overtime in every police and fire budget. Most of the overtime in police and fire budget has nothing to do with emergencies. It has everything to do with training, and it has everything to do with filling shifts when somebody is out to get training or they're out on vacation or whatever the case may be. When you look at your other departments, there are great similarities across communities. The key decision point that I think you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out if you can cut your way to quality. I think, in my humble opinion, again, having done that on several occasions with select boards during the course of my career, I think that's a little bit of a fool's errand. That's not to say you can't find efficiencies. Of course you can find efficiencies, and good management staff and your police chief and your fire chief and other department heads are always looking for efficiencies. But that's stuff around the edges. The decision point that Bridgewater is facing, in my estimation, and again, it's not unique to other communities of Massachusetts, is what quality of services do you want going forward? The quality is going to be dependent upon the resources you provide. And if you're not able to provide resources, then quality will suffer. And it's not anybody's fault, it's just a fact of operational reality. Because the vast majority of your services are forward-facing and require people to respond. So if you cut your police department, the response time is going to grow. If you cut your fire department, the response time is going to grow. If you cut the hours of the library, there'll just be less opportunity for people to visit a library, so forth and so on. That's not judgmental, that's just the reality. And I think, in my opinion, is, again, you can try to find lots of money in the municipal budget, but I used to do a chart that was kind of what's left for the town meetings, and I'd start with the gross budget, and then I'd take out those things which you could not cut, capital and debt that had already been voted on, right? You can't cut your debt budget. You've already committed to that debt. It's bonded and so forth, and you kind of walk through those things which you cannot cut, and you'd be surprised at what's left. And then if you try to put your $2.5 million, $3 million deficit against what's remaining, you'll see it's a huge number. It's a huge percentage of what's actually available. You do not have, whatever, I don't know what your debt is, but on your gross budget, you start there and you take the debt off, and now all of a sudden that $2.5, $3 million number becomes a much larger percentage. And if you take out things like retirement, you cannot cut the retirement allocation. State law won't let you cut it. So that's locked in. Your health insurance, yeah, you've got some variability in health insurance. If you lay people off, you're going to pay a little less health insurance. But by and large, your health insurance is going to be a number that's beyond your control. to a large extent. And so when you start ladling those things you cannot really impact to any great extent, you'll see what's left. And that was the chart I used to show people and say, that's the amount that you actually have the ability to impact. And then you'll see why I say you're not going to be able to cut your way to quality, in my opinion. So I'll take any questions people may have.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. I'll open up to questions from councilors.
First of all, thank you for your presentation, very comprehensive and good information. Would we also be able to get a copy of that PowerPoint?
Yeah.
That would be great.
I've given Carolyn
Okay.
the PowerPoint and the report, so I think I don't know what you'll.
We have the report. I'd just like that too.
Presentation we'll put online and we'll deliver to the council for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. I think basically the last bullet point up there is what we're talking about. Town leaders should prioritize resource allocation and long-term planning.
Right.
I think that's the crux of everything if you boil it down to one thing. And I liked your examples that you used from other towns. I like that process where you present to people what you can't cut first.
Right.
I think that's important for people to know. I only know it from my council experience and from being on a school committee before. So I just, you know, throughout the whole report, it would be nice if we could add to staff, basically.
Yes.
The reality is we can't. I'm concerned we might be cutting too much staff. I think the finance department and the town manager has done a wonderful job so far in giving us the budget information, but there are certain things that I don't particularly want to give up. I think your report shows the quality of the people that we have in the town.
Right.
I'm proud of our employees. I'm sad that they're going to have to take reductions in salaries. So I appreciate your report and the thoroughness of it.
And again, the report is intended to be kind of, I guess, a companion piece maybe, or a discussion document for the community to kind of give you a sense of what the state of affairs is with some data behind it. How you utilize the report, I guess, will be, you know, what you folks determine. If you utilize it at all, it could end up being a report that sits on a shelf. I mean,
No, the major thing too that you also pointed out is departments of one are not sustainable. It's just a vacation or a sick day or whatever is not good.
It's just a bad place to be from an administrative perspective, because again, if that department of one person weren't available, and again, I've had that situation, and I had a situation where, you know, we had just one veterans agent, and the person was no longer available to serve in that position, and you know, there was a gap in service to veterans, and it sounds like, well, okay, you know, people will figure it out, but a lot of the veterans that are eligible for service they're either the widows of veterans that are on a very, very limited income, and having access to service can mean a great deal of difference, or they could be veterans that have service needs and they also have to connect to other benefit agencies, federal, VA, and so forth, and the veterans agent does, you know, helps in that process. So there are real human stories behind each one of these services, and without some redundancy in some of these services, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and it's never easy to advocate for more. It's always the most difficult thing to do. It's the most professional thing to do, is to say, look, here's what I think your issues are, and again, it's up to the council and the citizens as to, you know, what the nature of the services are to be. It's a very difficult conundrum.
I don't know how our building inspector is able to do his job. I don't know how our health agent is able to do his job. I know the council or the senior center, 3 people. And all of those people, I think it's 4, all of those people are key people, and if any one of them went away, the library, just the facts that you put into the report about, circulation and different things like that, I don't want it on my chopping block personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from other councilors?
Mr. President, through you to the town manager, can you remind me again what the total cost of this report was for the Collins Center?
We have an appropriation of $30-something thousand. Should be.
So just for folks keeping track at home, we spent close to, or just shy of $100,000 in 2 reports now to tell us that we're underfunded and understaffed. And so I don't know how much more evidence we need to put forward to folks here to talk and give, real data that speaks to this. But again, I think this report was a lot of what we already knew in terms of us being understaffed and specifically areas that the public interacts with quite frequently. And so I would hope that I would guess that they understand that those areas are understaffed as well too. I do have a question on the 911 regionalization, just because you also shared that you had experience with that professionally too. What is the cost to a town to switch to that service?
Well, it will depend on the towns. First of all, the way in which you're currently doing dispatch, in my opinion, where you've got kind of a police dispatch and a fire dispatch, you could combine that to just a town of Bridgewater dispatch. I think that could be done with civilian dispatches, which would allow you to return to the patrol for uniformed police officers and firefighters. I know that's something that the police chiefs and the fire chiefs, are not crazy about hearing, but it's something I think should be considered. In terms of regional dispatch, when the 4 communities that were involved with the South Shore community dispatch, I think the savings, I know that the savings for my community, my budget was kind of flat for 3 or 4 years at least when we did the regionalization versus if I had kept it in-house. And there are some other benefits, and I will say this, we never went into that, and I was very specific when we were setting up that regional dispatch, myself and 3 other town managers and town administrators, that the purpose was not for cost savings. That wasn't the number one goal. The number one goal was for better service, because dispatch has evolved over time, and the requirements to dispatch has evolved over time. So now there's EMD, emergency medical dispatch, which was not in place 15 years ago, for instance. So there's a whole different protocol in the way in which dispatchers are supposed to talk to people that are calling in. The technology associated with dispatch is, changing over time, the software and so forth. And whether you do a regional center or just keep it within the town of Bridgewater, I think you need to view it as something that it's its own professional center, because I know that when you have somebody running a dispatch operation and that's their sole purpose, the training improves, the call response time improves, information improves, so forth. So there are regional centers across Massachusetts. One thing the regional centers get, they get a bigger share of the capital amounts of money coming out of the state 911 system, because everybody's phone has got a little surcharge for 911. So you get advantage of better capital infusion to make upgrades to the dispatch operation. You get, I know in the 4 communities where I was involved in, the chiefs, every chief was skeptical of the whole thing from day one. Their command staffs were skeptical day one. Of course, we kept them involved, and they were making many of the key decisions on how to implement it. If you talk to those folks down there now, they'll tell you they could not imagine going back to where every community was on its own, because there's just this great opportunity with the neighboring communities to have consistent information. So, sometimes bad guys start in East Bridgewater and cross the line, and it's kind of good to know, that's a call that's being tracked all the way across, as an example. So I don't look at it necessarily as a huge cost saver. I know this, it won't cost you any more than what you're spending now, but you'll get, I believe you would get better service, you would have more professional service, you would have better redundancy than what you currently have, and you would have There are people that professionally manage a dispatch operation, which means your technology would be up to date, and you would have folks that focus on that element of public safety, because it's an important piece of public safety. Police and fire rely on dispatch in order to determine what they're walking into or where they're going. So dispatch is a very important element of the public safety matrix.
Thank you. It just seems like an important decision that I'd want to understand fully.
Well, I would say this, that this report, it's not intended, this report is intended to open up that conversation. What we did in the community I was in, and, we did a study, and we looked at, we answered those questions, and we said, okay, what does this mean from a budgetary perspective? What does this mean from a operations perspective? Each community had their own dispatch set up slightly different. So what happens to the people that are working in Cohasset versus the people that are working in Hull? Do they get automatically brought over to the regional dispatch? So there's a whole process that you'd have to go through. The point of raising it in this document is to say, look, this is an area which, you currently have, right, even if you don't do a regional, you currently have, two groups of folks doing this dispatch. You might want to combine it, because, first of all, probably every fire call police rolls to. There's rarely a call that police doesn't go to on a fire call. So there's already an expectation of interoperability between the two departments, and it's happening anyway. So I was looking at opportunities that you might have some efficiencies. It's cheaper to hire a civilian dispatcher than it is to have a sworn officer doing that task. And civilian dispatchers are used all across the state. They're highly trained and they can do the job. And that may be a mechanism for you to at least help get some more folks back into the departments to help close that gap of staffing that you have in both your police and fire department.
Thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. I love all the information in the report. Very, very thorough. You stole my thunder on the dispatch, so I'll ask a little bit more about DPW numbers and our community size with our size of our DPW compared to similar communities. Where do you feel? I didn't see really a comparison on the town situation with numbers, but what were your thoughts of our staffing levels at the DPW level? Compared to similar communities?
I think DPW is an area where you could do some additional work. I'm going to leave water and sewer out of it because I know there's a lot of focus happening there, but in my opinion, I think with DPW, you could do some additional work and perhaps tightening up the administration and the organizational structure of that department. The reason why I had some difficulty getting numbers, there aren't a lot of comparator for DPW departments. So there's police statistics are available across the board for communities, fire, so forth and so on. DPW, it's really hard to find comparators. I think that the biggest question for DPW in my mind's eye was, I would start with the administrative structure of that department, take a look at that department and say, okay, I've got a superintendent or a DPW director, and then I've got these divisions, and my first question would be am I happy in the way those divisions are working individually, and am I happy in the way in which they're working with each other? And I think there's some work that can be done there, but I think it has to start with the administrative structure, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Questions from councilors? Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Going back to the dispatch, if we take a dispatch off, then there won't be anybody on the desk?
There won't be what?
Anybody at the desk. So if I walk into the police station, there won't be anybody there?
Yeah, I mean, again, I put that in the report as something that you ought to consider and further study. And I know that, for instance, when I was involved in doing the regional dispatch, in the 4 communities we're involved with, each community addressed that issue separately. So Cohasset, for instance, said, yeah, we're perfectly okay when somebody approaches the department, they're going to press a button and it's going to, ring to the people answering the dispatch calls, and, we'll have a little camera and so forth. Hull was different. We said, no, we want to have somebody sitting there, a reception person sitting there. So I think that's part of, this is put into the report for the purposes of, for you to consider the idea If you want to consider the idea, this report is not the way you get there. You would have to, first of all, identify what you want to do, or what are the options for dispatch. You've got thematically, you've got kind of three options. You can leave the status quo in place. The second is you can combine fire and police dispatch and keep it internal to your organization. And the third is you can seek to join a regional center if there's availability in a regional center, or you could seek to find regional partners. Those all have their own complexity and would require a lot of input from your fire and police department staff, from town management. And you really have to kind of study that as its own report, because the first thing you want to do is make sure that whatever choice you make, you're not making any situation worse, that you're improving the situation, right? So I see Dr. Perry there, and I'm assuming, are you a medical doctor, sir?
Chiropractor.
Yeah, so do no harm, right? So you want to make sure that if you're going to so that's why you would do a study on it, and you would kind of say, okay, let's look at what the inputs are. What are the budgetary inputs? What are the human resource inputs? What's the call volume?
So regional, they would have to learn a new code, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, again, when you say learn a new code, what do you mean?
Well, they have codes for different things, like for the fire, whatever happens, or they go to. So regional, they would have to connect and learn new codes? Because they use one code?
To be honest with you, I don't have a direct answer for that. I'm not sure they do or don't. I know that there are regional centers that are operating, and everybody's trained, and you try to get uniformity across the communities in terms of codes. I know the concerns that when this idea was first kind of launched, in the communities we were in, the managers and we did kind of a back of the envelope proof, just to kind of see, does this really have any validity at all? And we kind of looked at the gross population of our 4 communities, and we looked at how many people we were employing in dispatch. And then we found a community of a similar size, and we saw that we had like 30 or 40% more people doing, the same call volume as one community was doing. So that kind of began our journey, and it took, it started in 2012, and I think it took 4 years to get it up and running. But again, if you talk to people down there now, they'll tell you they couldn't imagine going backwards, because it's very valuable. And the police chiefs and the fire chiefs in those 4 communities are they're the main decision makers. There is a board, but, they're involved in all the quality control decisions.
I only have one more question. So you've talked to all the department heads. Did you talk to the fire and the police chief about the idea of regional?
Yeah, well, I know I talked with the police chief. He's here now, and I know we had there he is. I know we had a brief discussion on it, and I know and I understand his position and respect it. That his initial reaction to that is I'm not sure that would work here, and he was very polite. And,
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's not an unusual initial reaction. And again, it may not be the right answer for Bridgewater, but it's something that you should at least look at, because the purpose of this report, one of the purposes was to identify areas where you could be looking at different efficiencies or different operations. That's why when I looked at Park and Rec, for instance, I said, this is unusual. Most Park and Rec departments have a programming component. They're not just a maintenance component. So,
no, I appreciate it. I just kind of wondered what the chief said, but thank you.
He was very direct.
He usually is.
But he was, in a very good way. I don't, that's not code.
No.
That's not code for.
He's very
I got to
polite.
tell you, when I talked to both your chiefs, they're very articulate individuals, highly professional. They know what their job is. They are deeply committed to the community, and this is true of all of the department heads. I was really impressed with how committed your staff is to this community. Very intelligent. They really know. You've got a seasoned staff, which is great, because if you're going into a turbulent period, you want to have staff it's not their first rodeo. So, you're very fortunate in that respect, but.
Well, that's why I wanted to know what the chief said.
Yeah,
So,
he wasn't crazy about the idea to begin with.
All right, thanks.
Could I just have a minute? I really appreciate what you have to say. I appreciate your compliments of our staff and everything. They are incredible, and they are good. And I look out here and I see all of them sitting here trying to figure out, what are we going to do? Because I still don't know. I mean, we can say this is good and that's good, and maybe we can combine this. How do we get anybody to pay for it? That's my question. Because how do we take this to our community and say, all right, you're paying what you're paying, and you've got really good stuff, but it's not enough. It's
Yeah,
not enough.
Yeah, and I think that's the dilemma that not only you're facing, but just many communities in Massachusetts are facing. And again, I've kind of done this enough and have been involved in those discussions in the course of my career. You know, in 91, 92, there was a big downturn, that, you know, caused everybody to cut stuff. I mean, I had staff, you know, taking zeros for consecutive years, all this kind of stuff. 2008, 2009, I had a proposal, closure of a library and all this kind of stuff. But my experience has been is, you know, yeah, you can try to cut your way out of it. You're not. It's just not going to happen. The decision, I think, unfortunately, this body is, in some ways, the most determinative body in the discussion, because you can look to department heads to say, well, what can you do? And you're really asking them, what can you do to keep things the same with less? Not a fair request.
Not fair.
Not a fair request,
Not
because
fair.
they can't keep things the same with less. Because, you know, the number of calls isn't going to go down. If you cut the budget 10%, you're not going to have a 10% decline in public safety calls. You're not going to have a, you know, people are still going to have, you know, I fell off my roof. I had a stupid human accident when I was raking leaves, and, you know, all the stupid human accidents are still going to happen. So, you know, you shouldn't be looking to them to say, well, you know, how can you do the same with less? Because they can't. They really, you should acknowledge that we don't expect you to do the same with less. And that's on you guys and the general public.
I just don't know how to bring them more.
You have to be passionate about whether you think it's worth more and make the value
Well,
argument
my
to the general
passion just
public.
doesn't generate money for the town.
Well, there is a
It just
mechanism.
doesn't seem to do it.
I'm not an advocate of overrides. I was very parsimonious as a town manager in all the communities I managed in. I did a school reconstruction without a debt exclusion, but after 3 years, I realized that was stupid and went to the public and said, I'm sorry, that was stupid. We need to have the debt exclusion in order to keep operations going. My point is what I said earlier, you're all here for the same reason. You want to make Bridgewater a great place to live. You all have different opinions how to do that. All I can tell you from experience is you will not cut your way to making Bridgewater a great place to live. You need to be passionate, in my opinion, about why local government works and what you need to have in place in order to have great local government. Because local government educates your children, protects you during every major event that happens to you medically, and public snowstorm, you know, snowstorm, this, that, the other things. You know, you can also say, well, we're not going to make the argument, and we'll hope, we'll see what happens. That's not a plan, but,
Thank you.
you know, because you're required to have a balanced budget. So his dilemma, the manager's dilemma, is terrible.
It is.
Because none of these people, by the way, got into public service to do less. They're all in public service because they want to do more and they want to help. But the only people that can put them in a position to do that are you, the council, and the general public.
Yep.
But unfortunately, he's obligated to say, if you give me X, this is all we can do. But nobody's a magician in this business.
That's right.
That's the fact. Everybody tries to be this like a magician. When I was a much younger manager, I would do all these like stupid things, work incredible hours, all this stuff, and then I realized, you know, there's a point where the responsibility is also on other parts of the system.
You should have opened with that piece.
Well, maybe I'll close. I don't know.
Just a quick follow-up question based on what Ms. Hunt was just asking. So you did mention in the report our tax rate. I don't know, was there any analysis or an opinion as to our current tax rate for a town of this size? Do you feel it's appropriate? Do you feel it's too low?
Well,
in generation of revenue for the town?
Well, You know, the tax rate is this interesting number that I know a lot of people will put comparators and say, well, you know, I'm paying X number per thousand in Bridgewater versus East Bridgewater and so forth. But, you know, the real question isn't, the rate is really the end of the process after you figure out what you want to spend money on. That's what drives the rate, right? So, so you're still back to that same question in my estimation for local government. And you can tell I'm a huge local government advocate because I've spent my career in it, and when I was a young man, I lived in Africa for 2 years and saw how government can't work as a Peace Corps volunteer. So I can tell you that the rate is immaterial in the sense that the rate is derived by the services that are being provided. The core question that is confronting the community is, you know, people want the same level of services, and you don't have enough money to provide that level of services. And if you're willing to say, okay, I'm okay with a library that has 20% less hours, which, you know, is also going to lose your state grant, or I'm okay with response time going from, you know, 6 minutes to 8 minutes or whatever it is, then I guess you can do that. But people should understand that, you know, when your response time increases on a police or a fire call, those are life safety calls. And, you know medically, if somebody, you know, doesn't have medical response, 2 or 3 minutes can make a huge difference in what their medical outcome is. And with education, you only get one crack at a kid. I mean, you know, they're only 6 years old once. And, you know, so if you don't capture them and get them enthused about education, and if they're sitting in a room with 40 kids or 35 kids and you know, they're all fidgeting, I mean, how do you have that many kids sitting in a room and have an expectation they're going to learn? It's not a reasonable expectation. It just isn't, in my opinion.
Totally agree with all that.
Yeah.
Thank you for
So,
your-
I mean, you
for your
just,
opinion.
again, I would really urge you to focus on what you want and then craft your message about why that's important.
Well said. Thank you. Any other questions, councilors?
I have a question. Under tax collection efficiency, because we're trying to get money.
Yep.
Okay, you state the majority of tax bills, real estate, personal property, motor vehicle, and water sewer are collected successfully, but a notable subset requires additional action. So you have to go and try to press people to pay up?
Yeah, I mean, again, in every, you know, if you think about taxes, there's always properties that are being liened. You know, people's circumstances change. Sometimes they can't pay their taxes, and so they won't pay their taxes. There'll be a lien placed on the household. There's arrears. But the point in which a tax collector, when they lien a property to the point which you can compel a payment through some kind of a tax lien auction or something, is a very long time. So, you know, it's like any other, in this case, it's like many other businesses in that you will not collect 100% of what you bill within the time frame that the bill is due. You will always have some portion of bills payable in arrears. And that's always a challenge for communities. Part of that is, again, there is a human component to that, because the people who are in arrears, most of them no longer have a mortgage in many instances, because mortgages will tip any modern mortgage or any mortgage issued, and you know, most mortgages are issued with an escrow account, so that just kind of automatically gets sucked through. But there are people that may be in arrears that just don't have the wherewithal to pay the taxes, and they don't have the maybe financial sophistication to try to figure out alternatives, or the alternatives may be predatory, you know, reverse mortgages and things of this nature. So there's a whole conversation that treasurer collectors typically have with people that are in arrears. They try to get them onto payment plans and things of this nature. You know, when everything is said and done, it's, you know, the folks that are in arrears treasurer collectors spend a lot of time on those cases, but there's also part of that time is trying to understand what the human element of that arrearage is. You know, this isn't, you know, the city and towns aren't like Chase that will just send you a demand letter and, you know, a lot of
Foreclose on
times,
you.
you may have to
Yeah.
send a demand letter to get somebody's attention to come talk to the treasurer collector and set up a payment plan, but that's a different thing.
To our town manager, do we know how much tax money is unpaid at this point?
Yes, we have data regarding that. We do a very good job with tax collection. I could have our finance department give that information, but we're very good in terms of collections. But there are, and every community has that do have collections that they may fall into tax title or have to do more work to collect it. But we're very good in getting our collections. Good collections.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President. I'm just going to kind of jump off a couple questions that were asked about regional dispatch stuff, because I have a feeling this is going to come up again. Which system were you associated to in Hull? South Shore?
South Shore Regional
The
Emergency, yeah,
coastal
SHREC, it's called
SHREC, yeah.
Not like the green ones.
And you had police and fire dispatch through them, with two separate dispatchers, one for police, one for fire?
Each community was a little bit, so the 4 communities that were involved were Hingham, Hull, Cohasset, and Norwell. And each community was configured slightly different. So Hull, we had combined the police and fire dispatch internally into one dispatch operation. I don't remember what Norwell was. Norwell might have been 2 separate, like similar to what's going on here. So each community had slightly different internal operations. The thing that was motivating the 4 communities was partly the recognition that dispatch is its own element of the public safety world, deserves to be recognized. You know, it's become much more professional. It's a lot different than it was 20, 25 years ago. The liability to communities for not doing dispatch well is huge. The state was putting incentives in place. I think they still have incentives in place to create regional dispatch centers. So the state, came up with quite a bit of money to help create that dispatch center. All of the learning curve issues and the concerns that are probably present in many people's minds were present there. I mean, all the police chiefs and all the fire chiefs really didn't like the idea at all. Their command staff did not like the idea. A lot of people said, well, what about, poor Mrs. McGillicuddy, who, we all know who she is. When she calls, we know how to handle her. How would a regional dispatch know how to handle, Mrs. McGillicuddy, and, so forth and so on. So a lot of that stuff, I think, is kind of a common theme when you get into this discussion on regional dispatch or changing your dispatch, whether it's internal, going from police and fire just to a central dispatch or regional. A lot of those discussions get had in communities. It would not be unique to Bridgewater. But it's not something that you can just flip a switch and do. There is a process for it, and it may be right for you, it may not be right for you. The point of the report was to point out opportunities. I'm not advocating for it, I'm just saying that you need to, I think you would do yourself well to kind of look at that. You've got great command staff in place that can wrap their mind around it and that are intellectually able to kind of understand what the issues are. But I think it's worth looking at. If nothing else, it either validates what you're currently doing now. If you look at it, it could validate, yes, you're fine doing it exactly the way you're doing it. We don't want to change. It could point you in some different directions internally, and maybe we don't want to be regional. We just want to do something internally that changes it. We want to recognize that this is a very important function and that the training and the record keeping and everything associated with that operation, should be pristine.
I'm probably one of the few people that has that experience with a regional dispatch personally, having been on both sides. Not a strong dispatcher myself, but there was a large relief when it went to regional. But there's definitely a learning curve period for the regional dispatchers to associate with the town specifically. I have another question for you, and just before I even ask that, I do hope the town reads this. It'll be available. It's a bit of a long read, but I do hope the citizens read this just to be informed as to what they can expect based on what we do have for a budget. For automation, was there any avenues for any level of automation within the town from what we're already doing?
No, I didn't get into that too deeply. I mean, I think that, you've got some areas that I think you're already working on, your building permit system and things of this nature, your billing systems finance and so forth. And that's really where you would kind of find those opportunities. You know, your library is already associated with, I can't remember the acronym for the.
Sales.
Sales, is already, you know, associated with a large consortium of other libraries in this area and so forth. So, you know, that was kind of what I was saying at the beginning. Technology, a lot of people, when you get into these issues, will think, well, okay, I'll kind of automate my way out, or I'll, you know, use technology that will allow me to leverage. And it does allow you to leverage certain things, but because of the nature of the services you provide, and where your major cost centers are, on the general government side, your major cost centers, holding aside debt, retirement, health, and that kind of stuff, just your operational cost centers are police, fire, public works, and those are all, you know, very heavy labor organizations. And then on the school side, I mean, probably 85, I haven't done the percentage precisely, but about 85% of their budget is labor. So, and police and fire, it's like 90, probably even higher than 90%, it might be 92, 93% is labor. So.
Well, thank you for the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just have one here for myself. This is kind of adjacent to regionalization.
Yep.
You know, in our budget resolution, we talk about balancing between staffing and contracting and things of that nature. Obviously, if you're contracting services, you have a cost savings on the benefit side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading through. I have a few questions, but for the sake of time, I'll just you know, throw one out here. So I was looking at the report for IT support tickets. They nearly tripled in 2 years, and obviously that's a lot of bandwidth for these guys to handle. And we're looking at potential, you know, reductions in that department based upon our budget. So would it be pertinent to look at potentially allocating dollars towards a third-party contract to handle some of, you know, those more mundane tasks, and then allow, you know, a director to kind of oversee that operation more effectively?
That's a very good point. There are communities that use that model, that will have a third-party vendor available for certain IT operations. So yeah, that's something that you could explore, absolutely.
Okay.
Whether or not it would lead to a cost savings, I don't know. You know, the first question is, you know, what services do you need in order to keep the IT operation running? And, you know, what's the volume of that services? And then, you know, you can kind of figure out the unit cost of what those services are. I mean, you could kind of almost, depending on how you want to look at a budget, you could take the analysis of that budget and say, well, you know, I know there's X number of tickets, and, you know, what's the unit cost for a ticket, and so forth and so on. You can kind of get into it. The point is that your IT demand is increasing, and your resource is probably, in my estimation, is not adequate. How you ultimately get to adequate resource, whether it's a combination of contracting and QA control, quality control over that contractor. You know, I've been involved in that many times in my career. I mean, I contracted, you know, lots of the internal operations. I contracted a wastewater operation. I had a municipal light plant under my authority, contracted that out. So I'm familiar with, you know, contracting operations and leaving in place a QA, a quality control manager, to ride herd on the contract. But the first, when you start going into these things, unless it's really glaring that you can make a huge cost savings, you know, the first issue is how do I ensure quality? You know, the service quality is the #1 factor, because nobody wants to feel like they didn't. You know, everybody, when they call a police, you know, a 911 number, they expect service. Everyone, when they, you know, the IT piece, you have to have that functioning. I mean, there are certain days, you know, the town clerk that system has to work on that day of the election. It just has to work. You know, so forth and so on.
Great.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation.
Not at all. Thank you very much for allowing me to spend as much time as I did before. I'm sure I might have talked too much, but thank you anyway.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Okay, so we do not have, I'm sorry, for town manager's report, I know there's nothing on the agenda, but do we have any requests of our town manager for a future town council meeting? Nope. All right. Well, if anything comes up, please send an email. Sure.
Actually, I do, and that would be if we could have counselors speak at the beginning of the meeting with citizen comments as well as at the end. I just think that would provide better dialogue between the public and the council.
I'd like to second that too, just to say also.
To our town attorney, is that allowed in our rules and procedures? Are we able to change the agenda to reflect that? Or is that something you need to review?
I'm not clear on what the request
So
is.
I think what Council Ellenberg is asking for is a change in the agenda format to allow for council comments at the beginning in addition to the end. Is that something that is allowable under our rules, or is that something that, is that able to be done?
It doesn't follow your current format, though, so you may want to look into that in terms of changing the rules, though I suspect you could vote to suspend the rules. And
We used to
If
do
it-
that under Councilor Perry. We had 2 things of councilor comments. So it was in the past.
Just quickly to address that.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but what I'm saying is, you have specific rules of procedure, and there's a format which you all have established. So I suppose if you voted to suspend that, you could add something to it. I think if you intend on that being a permanent change, then you should
Then
probably.
we should go to rules and procedure.
No, I think you have to draft up legislation to that point and then have it go through the normal legislative process. But I think for a certain instance like that, you can suspend the rules. I don't see there being any issue with it.
Okay. Councilor
I was just going to say quickly, the agenda format is located in the admin code for the
Okay.
town, and that's something that Councilor Kennedy and I are already editing, and we're in the process of updating that legislation. So hopefully within the next few weeks, it should come forward.
Thank you.
And maybe you could coordinate with them and what they're doing, and then obviously looking forward to what you guys bring to the council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I was
believe
just gonna,
one of the proposals was actually one of the items brought up here as well, counselor comment period. So there's an ongoing discussion. Councilor Murphy and I are working through that, and now that he's a doctor, we can work on some town stuff.
Awesome.
I was going to say sometimes, as Councilor Ellenberg was saying, occasionally I bring things in. I put them out there over on the table for people who are here to take home with them. Something that they could do, like today it's the taking a pledge for butterflies. And so it'd be nice to be able to say that ahead of time to people, because by the time we get around to counselor comments, they've all gone. By the time we get all the way through most of what we're doing. And so sometimes it would just be nice to be able, like it was nice to say congratulations. You know, so just maybe small things. I don't know that we're talking about big things, but a few things that would be nice to say to the audience before they leave. So we don't just have to say them after they're all gone.
Sure.
My only advice on it, and only caution, would be if there are items that you intend on deliberating on and they haven't appeared on your agenda, you could be violating the open meeting law. So if there are items you know you want to converse about in advance, it would be a good idea to maybe put them in there as discussions and then take discussions out of order, if that's what you intend.
Yep.
Right? So you could vote to suspend the rules and take discussions out of order and have a discussion. But what I would worry about from your perspective, frankly, is that you haven't properly posted the matters that you intend on discussing. And if you don't properly post them and there are things in which you intend on deliberating on, be it in that meeting or in the future, you could violate the open meeting law. That's all.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. We don't have any discussions tonight. Committee reports, do we have any committee reports? Okay, seeing none. We don't have any legislation for action or old business, but we do have some new business, so I'll ask our town manager to introduce his FY 2027 annual budget.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I begin, I'm thankful that we had another town administrator or town manager to explain this budget process. I think we've heard some citizen comments say that it's a sobering budget. I do encourage our residents and our council, this information, my presentation, as well as our budget booklets for the enterprise funds and the general fund are online. We have a specific page for finance-related information that'll be available. I hope people really particularly take attention to the town manager's budget message as part of the general fund, because this is a very sobering, difficult budget. A lot of tough choices were associated with it, a lot of difficult decisions. I think I spent a lot of time trying to find the right message, understanding that the community had made a decision previously about not supporting a Proposition 2.5 override, and the effects on residents of paying for more for services. In addition, understand that I have to advocate for this community and the services that we deliver. And I think Phil did a good job of that, and I hope my budget message gives a clear indication of that. Furthermore, before I get into the presentation, I want to acknowledge the work and effort that goes into budget development. I want to thank all of my staff, our team here, who are important to this organization. But I want to particularly shout out Lori and our finance team and our department division heads who really do a lot of the work in terms of developing this budget. So first, I want to talk about the fiscal climate. I think if anyone is, I think a lot of people are paying attention. I'm glad Rep. Gallagher is here. The fiscal climate that we're in is not unique to Bridgewater. There's unique circumstances in Bridgewater that exacerbates our fiscal situation. But if you look around the Commonwealth, you open the Boston Globe, you're literally seeing community after community talking about the reductions in services that are having to do, reducing staff, and difficult decisions, talking about closing libraries entirely, getting rid of the senior center, a variety of things. I'm a member of the MMA Fiscal Policy Committee that worked to shape the perfect storm report that the MMA submitted this year. I'm very proud of that work. This is something we've been advocating for, more additional support from the state to support municipal operations. So I encourage people, the link is in there, read that report, understand the challenges that are not only just to Bridgewater, but uniquely to municipal government and operating a Proposition 2.5. So some of my objectives in terms of developing this budget, obviously the town council passed a budget resolution. I use that as a guidepost, but some additional guideposts, and I won't go into each one of them because they're part of my budget message, but I will highlight a few of them. Maintaining vital public services and limiting operational impacts of reduced services as best as possible. This budget is very difficult, and as we talk about this over, budget hearings in our finance committees, we'll see how difficult they are. Despite funding gaps, identify opportunities to invest in critical areas of need in town operations. And then furthermore, fund our educational partners to the best of our capability within the tax levy. And then, even as difficult some of these decisions are for our employees, I want to ensure we are trying to be able to recruit and retain talented employees and promote a positive culture in our organization. This next slide is just an indication that we do have a balanced budget. That is my requirement under this charter. And I did that, and I did it to the best of my capabilities and abilities with the revenue we had available for us. For the astute eye, and this is difficult maybe to see on this screen, we do have a balanced budget, but you'll know on the expenditure budget, there's a dollar difference, rounding. I'm a perfectionist, so I know those things, so I do want to call that out. I'll quickly go over revenues. In fiscal year 27, our revenues and the revenue breakdown, our four major revenue sources are property taxes. 79% of that revenue comes from property taxes, is broken out 85.5% residential, and the remaining 14.5% comes from commercial, industrial, and personal property. We get 7% from state aid, 8% from local receipts, and about 6% from other funding sources. Property tax revenue for this year, which is our largest source of revenue, is $65,497,693. That $65 million figure includes $6 million debt exclusion revenue, which doesn't fund the general fund operating budget. I will note for the council, I know you are deliberating about some various exemptions for veterans, but I've kind of heard from the council and listened to the Budget and Finance Subcommittee. We did include the town council abatement that I think you've talked about, 50% for veterans in this budget proposal. State aid revenue accounts for 7% of our budget. It represents a 2.2% increase. I'll highlight it's a net increase of $121,000. You'll note this is lower than the town has received over the past several years. I think Representative Gallagher has talked about the budget process. Typically, we utilize the governor's cherry sheet number, but hopefully the House budget and the Senate budget, when they get to conference committee, they will increase that revenue for not only for the town, but also for our schools as well. But in terms of budgeting, we utilize the governor's number. Our fiscal year 27 local receipt revenue, I'm talking a little bit further about this. It represents a 7.45% increase. You'll note this is the largest area where we do increase, and we aggressively increased our local receipts in conjunction with the budget resolution. And for the council and for the public, one of the things that I had talked with the council about and advocated, understanding what this budget climate would be, was to reduce our 2% on reserve fund balance to 1%. And I'm glad that the council supported that recommended change, because if we hadn't done so, it would have necessitated further reductions for the town, but even more, it would have led to less of an appropriation for our schools. I will highlight, however, that source of revenue is one of the most, along with state aid, it's most affected by economic conditions. If the economy tanks, maybe people aren't buying as many vehicles as previously, so your revenue will go there. If the Fed interest rate were to reduce, investment income wouldn't be as high. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and ultimately it does have an effect on our free cash, and that will have an effect in the forthcoming fiscal year. Other funding sources. One of the highlights about other funding sources, the ambulance reserve, which typically is funded about 30% of the fire department budget. And this year it's approximately 34%. It doesn't reflect the appropriation that the council did for overtime this fiscal year, but we're pretty much in line with the 30% funding of the fire department. You'll note a decrease in this funding source because, as people remember, as part of the post-override supplemental appropriation, we utilized $450,000 of reserve funds to support the school budget. And remember, when we talked about this, I said this will lead to further ramifications, because that number is obviously the number off of what the schools are growing their number off of. But that wasn't a recurring source of revenue. So that's why you see that net reduction, decrease in the amount of funds from other funding sources. Operating budget expenses. So in 2027, you'll note an overall increase of $1,967,487. It reflects a 2.49% increase. You'll note when you look at the revenue and you look at the budget message, there's a slight difference because of debt exclusion funds. And I'll highlight again, debt exclusion funds do not fund general fund operating expenses. We have state and county assessments and other items to be raised. These expenses must be included in revenue projection. I'll particularly highlight, for example, the snow and ice deficits. We've talked about, we had a $900,000 plus snow and ice deficit. As part of this process, we raised these funds in the revenue projections on state and county assessments. The largest impact on the town budget is education. It takes up about 55% of our overall budget, and this sort of breaks that down for you a little bit. I'll highlight the Bridgewater-Raynham school appropriation. Even though we do have other school districts, I particularly will focus on this. The BR School Committee certified budget requests, exclusive of debt, and I'm going to focus on the exclusive debt number, is $3,972,260. It's 11.2% increase, and an overall increase of 9.87% when you account for debt, because debt is slightly reduced for this fiscal year. The proposed town school appropriation of school exclusive of debt is $1,282,888, and that's based on our revenue share agreement, a 51-49 split of new revenue. We meet that agreement, and it results in a 3.6% increase for schools. There is a delta of almost $2.7 million versus their certified budget request and what we're able to give them. And I know someone clearly read my budget message earlier, but I will reiterate this. For context, if the town were to completely close the library, reduce 9 patrol officers and 9 firefighters from our budget, we still could not meet the appropriation request of that certified budget. That's in addition to already the reductions that are part of this budget. I think that highlights how difficult it is to get there. But even more so, What I really think is really important, that I hope people take away from this, essentially what we had available in new revenue for town operations outside of our education appropriation, which was 1.4 million, almost $1.5 million, is $540,000 total new revenue to fund the rest of our town operations. Further context, our employee benefits alone, that one line item, is increased by $1.1 million. And that shows you how difficult this budget is. Because the overall town operation growth of a budget is 1.4%. As I mentioned before, schools is 55% of the budget. This gives a breakdown of that. It's 45%, and it gives a breakdown of general fund budgeting, debt, department expenses, and salaries. And as was mentioned before, and this is similar to school funding as well as town, most of your expenditures is in people. It's not expenses. You can't cut the expenses away to get to a balanced budget. It's difficult. 83% of our budget is salary, wages, and benefits, and that's $30.1 million. And this gives a breakdown, this slide gives a breakdown of where those salaries go in our various breakdown of categories of service to the town. This slide is an indication of our employee headcount. This chart reflects since 2025, a nearly a reduction of 20 full-time employees. Now, this is not only just a reduction of these positions, and there are a large amount of them that we're not able to fill, but a part of this budget process is trying to offset salaries to alternative funding sources too, so that also is reflected in those reductions of full-time employees. Our status of our union contracts, I know the council's aware of this, but we have pretty much settled with all of our union groups. We have one outstanding with fire that's going through arbitration at state GMC. We're settled through this fiscal year with a majority of our collective bargaining groups, but we also did settle and we're tentatively agreed, and we're waiting town council approval on the police contract. But essentially, the status of union contracts for not only this fiscal year is 1% for this fiscal year. The following fiscal year is 1.5% for all of our settled groups. And for collective bargaining groups that we settled for fiscal year 20 is 1.5% as well. And I will remind people that our union groups that had previously settled reduced their COLAs for not only this fiscal year, but our next fiscal year to help us address these budget challenges that we saw. This slide gives an indication. I didn't put too much of this information in my budget message, but it is a part of our budget, and it's an important part of it, which is debt service payments. In fiscal year 27, that's $6.6 million, and that includes debt exclusion. So this chart tells you what's debt exclusion and what's funded within our levy limit. As I mentioned before, I won't go too in-depth with this, but 83% of our budget is people. That's salaries, that's benefits, high-level indications of increases in benefits. Health insurance is going by 10%. Our pension costs are going by 7.26%. You know, and then I give some indications of some other expenses that are part of our departmental budgets. I won't go into that, being cognizant of our time. What is an average tax bill? So there's some, and I think it's important, I'm going to focus on Bridgewater, but I wanted to give this information on what the average single-family home values and the average tax bill. So we have this slide here, but I will focus on Bridgewater in particular. What is the average tax bill? What's our average single-home values? For 2026, the average home value is $616,769. The average tax bill is $7,420. What I think we get from this chart, and I hope what people look from this, is in comparison to the average single-family home value versus the state, in 2020, there was a $326 delta. Yes, $326 delta. Now it's a $690 delta, and has more than double in comparison to the average tax bill in Bridgewater versus the state. That figure is likely to grow with more communities looking at overrides this year. This year, we have not only a record amount of communities pursuing overrides, but a record amount in terms of dollar figures of these overrides as well, because these challenges, municipal financing challenges that a lot of communities are facing. But more importantly, for further context, for Bridgewater specifically, if you look at 2020 versus 2026, you'll see that our property values have increased by over 55% since that period. However, our average tax bill has not increased to that level as well. If it was proportional, the average tax bill would be over $9,000 if we consider property tax value growth versus the average tax bill. So I can unequivocally say that I do think Bridgewater gets great services considering what it pays for. This slide, I think, is a very good slide that our finance team and our IT team worked on, but it gives you an indication generally how your tax dollars for an average home is allocated in our budget. Encourage people to take a look at that. This is not a new slide. I know we talked about this last fiscal year, but Bridgewater spending per capita in comparison to our statewide average, we are far below other communities when we look at statewide average. When it comes to education, when it looks at general government, and all the other services that we provide. I know we're a little bit closer maybe in police and fire, even though we're under, but I would say police pretty significantly under, fire close comparison, but one thing to account for, a lot of communities still use call services and have volunteer fire departments. For a full-fledged paramedic service to be close in comparison to that, I think that's an indication that we're not up to snuff there as well. So budget challenges for fiscal year 27. As I mentioned before, we had a little less than $540,000 in new revenue. This by far, and I've done budgeting for some years, this is by far one of the most difficult budgets that I've had to present a balanced budget for without resorting to absolutely draconian reductions in services, personnel, or relying on fiscally unsustainable practices like using one-time, non-recurring sources of revenue. I didn't do that because that's fiscally unsustainable, but I do hope people see that this is not a budget that I believe meets the community's needs or requirements, but it is my duty based on this charter and my professional duty to provide a balanced budget, and that's what I did. So some of the steps that we've taken to balance the budget. We started that process in fiscal year 26, as the council is aware of. We quickly identified some of the budget challenges based on the post-override supplemental appropriation, the use of non-recurring sources of funds. We made strategic decisions not to fill some of these budgetary positions that we unfortunately have to continue in part of this proposed budget. We collaborated with our union groups, our department heads, non-union staff to reduce COLAs, once again, not only for this fiscal year and the next fiscal year. What we did as part of fiscal year 27 process of balancing this budget is our finance department, our department heads really worked hard to review budgets to identify areas where expenditures could be reduced. We took advantage of opportunities to allocate general fund expenses to grants or alternative funding sources. I'll give an example, the recreation department. You'll notice there's a large reduction in the recreation department, but we're shifting those expenses to the recreation revolving fund, which they largely support, and that's the maintenance work that we talked about. And once again, collaborating with a majority of our union groups and our staff to reduce hours for non-public safety employees. And I'll talk a little bit further about that. But I want to emphasize, if these adjustments had not been made and when we started in fiscal year 26, we would have been in an even more precarious situation than we are now. It would have resulted in further reductions, ultimately resulting in further reduced services for the town. And for further context, I think it's important for people to understand when you reduce a person or a position, it's not just a dollar for dollar difference. You have to account for separation costs, there's unemployment costs and different things associated with that. So there was real strategy in this budget, creativity. I know someone else mentioned being creative, and we try to be creative in this budget to limit the reduction of staff. And what we did is we reduced hours. And I want to talk a little further about my staff and our team here. This I'm going to read verbatim because I think it's really important to get my sentiment across, and it's really important for us to hear this and understand some of these decisions. The decisions that I've made to reduce COLAs and reduce hours of many hardworking men and women is not easy on me, nor is it easy on the staff affected by those decisions. We're not talking hundreds of dollars, literally in case of many, it's thousands of dollars in reductions in pay. We all care about this community, and we all make up this community. This includes our residents, our businesses, and our employees. We are a collective. So while this is something, not something we want to do, we collectively, and I say this collectively because I had to work with our union groups here to get some understanding and be on the same page here. We didn't want to see even further reduced service for this community. We didn't think is right. Furthermore, as we look around this Commonwealth and the challenges that many communities are facing, you're seeing pretty exorbitant reductions in staff and reductions in services. I haven't seen many communities do what we are doing here in Bridgewater, which is the combination of reduced COLAs, reduced hours. And that's associated with our collaborative nature and a real commitment to delivering as best as possible quality services to this town. And I hope our community realizes this as part of this budget process. But ultimately, a well-functioning town cannot continue to expect that staff will continue to reduce their wages and benefits and still be able to recruit and retain talented employees, or with limited revenue that doesn't meet the needs of our communities, expect that we can deliver exceptional services to the town. It's simply not possible. And while we have adopted a sentiment of doing more with less, that isn't sustainable. And I think this budget is at that financial crossroads where it isn't sustainable, that we can continue that. This slide, unfortunately, hopefully in the future, when I present these, our future budgets, we'll see some other more positive aspects. But in terms of significant budget adjustments, it's largely reductions. I won't go through all of them, but it highlights some of the positions not filled. Once again, these are positions that we didn't fill maybe as part of this budget process that we have to continue. We have 2 positions specifically with employees in here that we are reducing, and that's unfortunate, but we had to balance our budget. You'll note that $561,000 of these budget reductions are reductions of current employee hours. Like I said, I mentioned recreation salaries being charged to revolving, et cetera. One of the highlights, I'll mention 2 highlights. One of the highlights of the budget is that we're able to add back the firefighter that we lost in the previous budget, and that was a strategic decision. Once again, the council did support providing more overtime with the ambulance appropriation, so we'll be able to add back this firefighter in the middle of the year. It makes sense, and hopefully that will mitigate some of the overtime expenses that are associated with losing that firefighter. But furthermore, I know I've talked with counselors about this, we've addressed it. There's more demands, and look, we're very aggressive with grants, but I have identified that we need more support in procurement and grants. So we're gonna reclassify a vacant business unit analyst position, and I know I put more workload on the finance team. I asked Lori not to fill that position, but I wanted to make sure we could reclassify that position to a grants position and a procurement position so we can be as aggressive as possible, mitigating the costs on our residents to get as many grants as possible, but also address a huge need in the town with procurement. So let's talk a little bit about the service impacts from budget cuts. These reductions will impact service delivery to the town. So once again, a majority of non-public safety full-time employees will have their weekly hours reduced by 5. That equates to 30,732 hours over the course of the year that will be reduced as part of this budget. That's 591 hours a week and productivity that is removed as part of this fiscal year budget. And so when we talk about library and put it in context, people, we're front-facing, and I'll talk about DPW, for example. I'll talk about the library. We have the library trustees here, we have the library director here. We provide a lot of programming and services that people rely upon. It's not just circulation, it's not numbers of books coming in and out. It's about our interactions with the public. It's about our interactions with our seniors at the senior center, where maybe that time at the senior center is their only interaction with their colleagues. So it can't be equated just in those numbers, but in that dynamic experience with our employees. So that's the amount of hours we're losing in delivering to our community. I think that's pretty significant. So the demand from the community for more expected services with less support, I think if you heard this from the Collins Center, I thought Phil did a good job, is not sustainable. He didn't know the extent of we're doing this. This work that they did was in this fiscal budget it didn't look at what this fiscal year budget proposal is. So our area of greatest impact will be non-public safety entities, although the DPW department, which is a public safety-facing entity, does have several positions that are not being filled in this proposed budget. And I think it's important to provide context. So the town has 6 full-time roadway workers. The highway department, those roadway workers are responsible for over 114 miles of roadway in town. By the way, we're adding to that mileage as we accept more roads, and I know the council has done that. Essentially, that equates to 19 miles per person in that department. And give you a like-for-like comparison, because I know this data wasn't part of the Collins Center, but I thought it was important to share with the community. West Bridgewater has 8 highway workers that maintain 50 miles of roadway, which equates to about 6 miles per person. So as we've already emerged from spring, where the demand, I believe I had a meeting with our downtown businesses yesterday, and I've heard from our community members, we're emerging in spring, we need more potholes filled, we need the line striping, we're worried about street sweeping and trash. We cannot deliver those services with the workforce that we have. We do the best that we can. And that is why it's very critical. Like I say, a budget is a statement of your values and what's important to you. We have to evaluate this. But I think that's a good comparison and a clear understanding of how difficult our situation is and the responsibility, for example, the DPW department. So what are some of our impacts? As part of this fiscal year budget in the town hall, it will necessitate closing on Fridays moving forward. We're working with our union groups to see if we can expand hours on another day, so hopefully we can deliver service outside of the typical hours that we've had. Our senior center will have reduced service hours during the day, but it's tentatively not scheduled to close another day, but our senior center director is really trying to be creative and work with her staff to make sure we try to minimize as best as possible and not have to close the senior center for another day, but there will be reduced services. Our time frame of delivering those services to seniors will diminish. Obviously, the library, we're well aware that the library is currently closed on Saturday. Based on this fiscal year budget, our library director and our library trustees, in conjunction with the community, I know the council wants to weigh in this, but library hours will be affected, and it's quite likely that another day will have to be closed as part of that process. I want to highlight some high priority needs for future consideration. This is not comprehensive because there's many needs, and I think the Collins report highlights that, but I do think these are some of the needs that have been highlighted before, and I clearly want to highlight them now as we navigate this next budget, but also some of the demands that the council is already considering. For example, the additional abatements for veterans. The assessing department, we need more admin support associated with that abatement work. I know we've talked about residential exemptions. You would absolutely need to add staff back into the assessing department. Inspectional services. We've long said a deputy building inspector is absolutely crucial for doing more zoning enforcement and meeting the demand for the variety of permits that we have. It's also a revenue generating department, so it absolutely makes sense to add bandwidth there for our community. The library, clearly increasing hours and restoring days that are closed. I think you've had a trustee, and I think we've all talked about this. There's potential ramifications of not funding our library appropriately, losing state aid, losing certification. And I know our Rep. Gallagher is here, and this is a conversation I will have and our communities have. You know, I know there's concern about decertification, but one of the things that our fiscal policy committee is doing, and we're advocating to the state, is shame on the state if they were to decertify our library and a lot of other communities who are looking at closing their libraries entirely, and they're not providing enough support and funding for us. So I hope they work with us. I hope they work with us to navigate that so we don't lose vital state aid in already difficult fiscal climate. DPW, obviously adding back positions to the highway. Over the years, we've continued to reduce our team there. Fire, the need to add additional firefighters for staff and public safety. And in addition to police, for increased community-based policing, traffic enforcement. These things are very important. And I think the Collins Center report, the biggest takeaway there, and there's a lot of information there, and I do agree, I hope that the residents do read that report, they look at the presentation. It identifies that we're a lean organization, and a budget like this that's so difficult exacerbates the challenges we face as an organization, as a town. How can the town address these revenue challenges? I know we've talked about this when we've had joint meetings with the school committees and so forth. this is a revenue issue. Revenue needs to increase to meet the demands of the increased services. So how can we achieve that in a fiscally sustainable manner? There's only a couple of methods that we have available to us. You have a Proposition 2.5 override, which this budget doesn't propose. You can expand the tax base with new growth or development. We're all aware that there's challenges with that in our situation because of water and wastewater infrastructure challenges where we're at. Significantly increased state aid for education and local town services, and increased fees for town services. The town has been very good at reviewing its fees for permits and so forth. I know we're working with Raftellus to do a review of our water and wastewater connection fees, but those will be directly to the enterprise fund. In terms of general fund revenue opportunities, I don't see a lot of opportunities to increase fees for services there, but we still should look at those opportunities. But those are the avenues that we can to increase our revenue, and they're pretty limited. I focused on the general fund, and I'll briefly just talk about the enterprise fund. The enterprise fund information is online. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit further in Budget and Finance subcommittee, as well as the budget hearing, but I do want to give the high-level increases for these budgets. The water enterprise budget is increasing by 12.7%. Once again, I think people know we're making infrastructure improvements that we need to account for. We'll talk about that further. The wastewater enterprise fund budget is increasing by 3.5%, and the transfer station enterprise fund is increasing by 10%. Once again, people will see this presentation online. You'll be able to find the fiscal year 27 budget. Right on our front page, there's a dashboard that has all this information. And once again, I appreciate our staff. I appreciate the community. There's been a lot of feedback and input. I've met with a lot of people, a lot of feedback and input from our counselors. I did the best that I could in terms of trying to limit the reductions of services. It was very difficult, a lot of tough choices, but I think we rose to the occasion.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Obviously, it's a difficult time, and it's a sobering time to be looking at a budget like this. Do any of our counselors have any immediate questions? We're going to refer this over to our Finance Committee and Budget and Finance Committee, where we're going to do a deep dive, and obviously we'll bring this back. But are there any high-level questions to start with?
Not a question, just a statement. I think we need to let it go through the process. We still have another month to go with this Budget and Finance Committee, and, you know, talking to the town manager. I know the library trustees had an emergency meeting last night. I just don't want to see us lose that state aid. That's a significant amount of money, or be decertified. So that's one of my priorities that I'm going to fight for.
Thank you. Anything else, counselors? Okay, a lot of work to be done, 45 days from today for us to vet through the budget and go through everything. So we'll officially take up under new business budget order FY27-001, FY27 annual town budget. I know that we just had an extensive presentation, but to our town manager, do we have any comments on this piece of legislation as it is?
No, I think we'll play it out in the Budget and Finance Subcommittee and the Finance Committee as well.
All right, great. Do I have a motion to refer to Budget and Finance and the Finance Committee?
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have Budget Order FY27-002. This is for the Water Enterprise Fund. To our town manager, any comments on this one?
No.
Thank you. So that being said, I'll ask for a motion to refer to Budget and Finance and the Finance Committee.
So move.
Motion made.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is Budget Order FY27-003. This is FY27 Sewer Enterprise Fund. Anything from our town manager?
No.
All right. So what I'll look for is another motion to refer to Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Motion made.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And next one, we have Budget Order FY27-004, FY27 Transfer Station Enterprise Fund. I'm assuming we don't have any comments on this one, so again, I'll look for a motion to refer to Budget
So
and
moved.
Finance Committee. Thank you. Motion made. And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And next up, we have Budget Order FY 27-005, authorization of revolving funds. Anything on this one?
I will just mention, because this wasn't mentioned part of my budget presentation, these revolving funds stay the same as the previous fiscal year, so there's no change.
Okay, thank you. And do I have a motion to refer to Budget and Finance and the Finance Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and a second. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And last one is Order FY 26-061, Town Clerk Salary. I will ask Councilor Murphy to introduce this one to us.
Yeah, I put forward this town clerk salary order. Just as we do every year, the council sets the salary for the town clerk on an annual basis. This does represent a 5-hour deduction from the current town clerk operating hours. She was at 40 hours, which equated to 2,080, I think, hours in total. And so we reduced it by 5 hours a week in line with what we're doing with some other folks here in the town hall. So that's reflected here.
Thank you for that. That math makes sense. So do I have a motion to refer this to the Budget and Finance Committee?
So moved.
Motion made
Second.
and a second. Any comments on this one?
I know we voted on this last year in June, the end of June. I know we're reducing it. I was looking for that reason initially, so it's a 5-hour reduction. Was there anything taken into account for the 3 elections coming up this year in that? I know those are part of the salaried position with the additional hours and stuff, so if maybe that's a discussion for Budget and Finance, but that was something that I was looking at as well, is just what the actual workload is for this calendar year.
Yeah, I didn't take the specifics into consideration, although I'm not sure we took specifics into consideration for every employee in the town hall who is also seeing a similar reduction individualized. So no, I guess to answer your question, to be straight, I did not consider that there are 3 elections coming up.
Just to make a comment, as a former town clerk for 9 years, I was never paid for an election on a Saturday. So it's never been part of the payment. The people who assisted me were paid, but the town clerk didn't get any extra money for working from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night on those election days.
Mayor, you had something, and then we'll go to Mark.
Maybe you know, Ms. Hunt, don't you get stipends
Just gonna ask that.
for the extra for doing the, I remember last year's there was something about stipends.
Lori says I did, so I must have.
Okay, all right.
And
Thank you.
Councilor Lindy.
I would like to see it taken into consideration for the 3 elections. I think that's a lot of work, and I understand that everybody else is going to get cut, but I just think that's should be considered.
Yeah, and I don't believe, did you get benefits as town clerk? Health insurance and pension?
No, I didn't. I didn't
Okay.
take
And
any.
neither does the current town clerk.
Yes, yes.
So that's
Something to take into consideration as well. So while you know, it's good to start with the blanket concept of a similar reduction, but I think we need to take every position into account when we look at something like this. And the council has the purview to set the salary, so it will do that work in Budget and Finance and bring it back, and we'll see where we land. Any further comments? Okay. So we're voting to refer over to Budget and Finance Committee. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And that is all that we have for new business. So we will now move on to citizen comment. Due to Massachusetts open meeting law requirements, discussions will not take place during public comment periods. If appropriate, responses to questions and concerns will be given by the town manager at a future town council meeting. Anyone may comment at this time for up to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Tom Arrighi, 20 Ledgewood Drive, Bridgewater. I'm on the Recreation Department, and I've heard a lot of things since, the budget. Jason did a great job telling how bad the budget is, and it's a bad situation. When the Phil did the presentation, I just wrote down some notes, because he was talking about programs, and we had programs going until the golf course was bid out to Troon Golf, and now the programs and the money that we were bringing in within the revolving account are gone. So we had the Thursday night golf league, that was an adult league. We had the Jack Buckley School of Golf that we ran, great program. All the kids in Bridgewater were using it. The funds were coming to us and going out to the different programs that were other programs. We had a summer program. This all happened 22. We had a summer program. Nancy Wood was running it. We had that for 30 years. We ran that program. That was taken away. So when I hear the people talking about the, raising money, because that's how it is. I run a business. It's revenue and expenses. If you're tying our hands so we can't raise the funds, it's crazy. And to this day, I don't understand why the golf course was taken away. It blows my mind. The last, I think, 2022, we gave the town $450,000. That money back in 1995, the money that was raised out of the golf course, and it was a town meeting voted that the revenue would go to the recreation department so we could get more programs, do more things. Since that, when we started making money, it disappeared. And then it was, no, that wasn't exactly what the vote was for. No, the vote was for that, for the recreation department. So right now, we're bone dry with money. So what we raise our money is on the kids' back, because we have to put it to the sports teams. Anyone who uses the pickleball courts, anyone who uses any of the courts in town, the basketball courts, you go by it on Thursdays, the kids are having all the things. We're charging all the teams money to use the courts. So that's where our revolving money is coming from. So I'm asking this. We have 2 full-time employees. They're taking care of, this is amazing, 15 fields, 3 parks, Marathon Park, Big Park, and also all the other parks, the new parks that Katie Doherty has put into place. They're responsible for those. So we're asked to take care of it. So I'm asking the town, why can't we take the money that you're cutting out of our 2 full-time employees, can't we take it out of the revolving account? Just to talk about our full-time employee, he's been with us 26 years. He ran the golf course. He took care of all the fields in the golf course. And when the town went out to bid for somebody to run the golf course, he came to work with the town. And so I'm asking, can we move that $13,000 and then $6,000 for his assistant into the revolving account? Just to add other duties he does, he plows snow. He doesn't get paid extra, he plows snow. He goes beyond the time, usually if you're saying he's only gonna work 35 hours a week, how's he gonna cut the fields? I don't understand it. How are we gonna cut the fields if you're cutting them down? So I'm saying, let's be smart about it. Let's use that revolving account. Let's see it, and what we'll do as a board, we'll raise the fees higher. It's all going to affect. It's another tax, shall we say? That's all we're doing. It's taxing the community again. But if that's what we have to do, the rec department can keep surviving and offering more things. But I'm asking for advice from the town manager, Jason, or the board. What should we do so we can take care of the 2 people? 2 are getting cut. And he, like I said, he's been with us 26 years, and the other one's been with us, I don't know the exact time. So all I ask, give us some advice, give us some guidance. Our hands are tied. In 2022, we ran the golf course, things were good, money, and the town was making money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Hanson, Pleasant Street. I definitely agree with him. I don't know why the golf course had to be outsourced. We need the golf course back. I'm not a golfer, but the revenue was beneficial. And I had a quick question. IT's demand has increased. I'm curious, has it increased since that lovely new website we've gotten? Or is it, was it a problem with the old website? That would be something to maybe investigate. But I just wanted to clarify something I had said earlier. I didn't want it to be an issue. Not sure if anybody took it wrong, but I just want to make it clear that the lack of the response or the replies or acknowledgement that I didn't, have was disturbing as far as the charter committee, and sometimes at other times. I had to ask if they received my application. I had to, because I didn't get acknowledgement. I emailed everybody yesterday at the town council to find out what was happening, because I didn't even know you were doing it tonight. I didn't even know you had a meeting tonight, because of the new website, I'm still not getting notifications. A friend had to tell me, and I said, oh, there's a meeting tonight? But I never received a response from anybody, except for 2 did contact me, but I never received acknowledgement from the president or anybody regarding my email yesterday, because I was asking what's going on. And President Loretti, you said that you didn't send out emails because just in case they needed somebody. But how about just sending an email out saying that, just in case, when we haven't made it 100%, but blah, 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 blah. I didn't even get that. That would have been fine. I would have understood, but to be left hanging. So I'm just asking to just be mindful of response. I wasn't focusing on resumes or anything like that. I was just focusing on lack of a response. So just a response of any kind would be appreciated and courteous, especially when somebody is trying to volunteer for a committee. Just to say, hey, we haven't made a decision yet, or we got your request, or we'll let you know if anybody backs out, sorry you didn't make the cut or whatever. So that's all I'm asking for, is just acknowledgement. And, I appreciate everybody's time, but, having that. But get the golf course back, and just curious, is IT's increased because of the new website or other issues? But thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Gina Gasconi, Wall Avenue. First off, I want to thank the Hansons for having the foresight to preserve their land. And I want to thank everybody who worked on, for the town, all the outside organizations and agencies. It was a great job. If anybody attended the ceremony yesterday, thank you. I've never seen so many likes, loves, and comments on Facebook for anything. I think the Hansons have to be the best loved family in town, definitely. Want to say ditto to what Tom said about Parks and Recreation. My question is, I believe the town should take back the golf course as well. But my question is, and I should know this, I apologize that I can't remember how it went. Money coming from Truton, from the golf company, golf management company, is that going into the revolving fund? Where is that going? For last I heard, one of the most recent payments to the town from the management company was $500,000. I hope that number that was quoted to me is correct. But, so my question is, and I apologize if I missed it in Justin's presentation, which was great, by the way. My question is, where does that money show up? Is it going into a revolving account? As Tom said, what can it be used for? Is it just going into the general fund for the town? Cuts that have been proposed are more than devastating. I don't want to pit one department against the other. Public safety, DPW, I just can't imagine. Somebody made a comment earlier about our students being second-rate citizens. Looking at what's proposed with the devastating cuts, I think we're putting not just our students as second-hand citizens, we're putting our citizens as second-hand citizens. And citizens have to look at, they still want the services, but they don't want to pay for them. So thank you. I don't envy you folks at all coming up with a budget, but I would appreciate looking into the golf revenue to see where that goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up and speak? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to council comments. I'll start with Councillor Lindy.
I think a lot of time was put into the budget, careful consideration by the town manager and the finance department and all the department heads, and I thank all of them and all the employees for being here. I personally don't like proportional cuts across the board. 5 hours for everybody. I think it devastates small departments, especially one-person departments or 1.5-person departments. I don't know how that we can shortchange our citizens. I agree with the statement that Gina just said about second-class students and second-class citizens. This is not good. A lot of work needs to be done. Again, I'm going to just keep saying it. I was a library person a lot sooner than I was a school committee member or a counselor. I was a library trustee in my former town for 23 years. I sat at that board meeting when we had to decertify Bridgewater that time. It was the worst vote I ever took. I don't want to see it happen again. I use the East Bridgewater Library, I use the West Bridgewater Library. I don't want to not be able to take out a book from those libraries. The senior center I go to often. They're about as strapped as they can be with the people they have. So this is a tough budget. I know there's a lot of work to be done, but I don't see how we can make some of those cuts. I think we have to look at shifting some of it. And I do want to thank the Hansons. That was a wonderful ceremony. Voting is open now, so people get a chance to vote early. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt?
Yes. Yes, I'd also like to say congratulations to the CPA for a wonderful program at the Hanson Farm. Yesterday, I saw some of the counselors there. I saw 2 of them from over there who were there. Mark was there, and our town manager was there. It was we had nice weather. It was a lovely thing. So congratulations, and it's a big, big deal for the Community Preservation Committee. They have spent years and years working on getting that farm. And very soon, the walking trail will be all done, and people can go out there and take a walk around. I also wanted to say, I love it when there's stuff in kind of the front page of the, it isn't the front page, it's the metro page of the Globe, with 3 public campuses in Massachusetts launching new co-op programs, and BSU is one of them. So I wanted to say congratulations to BSU for that. That's very nice to hear. And, oh yeah, there's a pledge to support monarch butterflies. I know you probably think it's all silly, but monarch butterflies are disappearing, and we'll be working on the Flora T. Little Park, getting some plants in there, things that will attract the monarchs. And if people want to do that in their own houses, I think that's, or not in their houses, around their houses, I think that's a good idea. And I put a copy of the pledge out over there if anybody wants to take it and say it and share it with their neighbors and make us get more monarch butterflies. And that's it, just the good news stuff.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I guess I get to do this all the time. It's 10 o'clock, so I need to make a motion to extend the council meeting
We
briefly.
almost made it.
Motion made. Did you second? I'm sorry.
No, I said we almost made it past 10.
Second.
Yeah.
Sean will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yep. We're almost there.
Motion passes.
No, don't change.
Yeah, he always,
Stuck in my ways.
Councilor Murphy, Dr. Murphy, congratulations again. You're up.
Thanks. Since we took advantage of extending the meeting, I guess I will make a few comments. I just want to thank the town manager and the staff for putting together the difficult budget and the time that they spent putting together this budget. I know that every decision wasn't easy. Every staff member that's losing hours wasn't an easy decision to make, and it's obviously going to impact our town for the foreseeable future as well too. I know we talked about the town clerk's salary this evening, but she's one of the many folks that are going to be impacted by these changes in this budget. And I hope that we can have deep conversations about how that's going to affect individual departments. I just don't know that we're ever going to come to a conclusion where we're going to make money appear. So I know the residents of this town voted against an override, and I would never bring that idea forward at this time because I think the citizens have spoken. But as a result of that, I think that everybody has to be aware that services will decline and our ability to get our citizens information won't be as effective as it has been in years past. And that's just something we all have to live with as a result of that vote. And so it's going to be a very difficult next year and maybe future years to come. But hopefully we can work together as a community to come to some conclusion on how to ensure that our town is able to provide its citizens with the best possible resources that we have. So again, just a thank you to the folks who took the time to put this together. Thank you to the department heads who also expressed, I'm sure, their needs and difficult decisions that they had to make as well too.
Thank you. Dr. Perry.
Thank you. Well, it's good to have another doctor on the board up here, so I don't want to be the only one. But to start with, I definitely want to thank all those that we appointed tonight to the Charter Review Committee. Thank all those that did put their name in as well. Couldn't put everyone on there, obviously, and those that were nominated, obviously, there wasn't any problems with any of those candidates, so it was really difficult to vote against any of them. So based on their nominations, we put those names through, I feel. Look forward to the town cleanup this weekend. I'll certainly be participating. I just got to figure out what location I'm going to head to. I did downtown last year. Maybe I'll switch it up, go to a different area. And very much echo, Councilor Murphy's sentiments on the budget. I thank the town manager and the financial staff for all the hard work they've put in. It's a terrible situation that we find ourselves in. Our town budget of $82.5 million, as I've mentioned before many times, is way behind similar towns of similar size and similar populations. We should be well over $1 million to manage the services and the schools that we need and have. And as mentioned again, it's a terrible fiscal time to ask for an override, but when 80% of the budget is based on the taxes this town collects, the biggest way to potentially increase our town revenue is through their taxes. So if we don't do it now, we'll definitely end up having to do it later, and the longer we kick the can down the road, the bigger that number gets. Because 2.5% just doesn't keep up with what we need as a town for the service that we need. And just as the presentation was made here this evening, we choose the level of services that this town provides with the monies that we spend toward the town. So if we choose to have less than adequate services based on saving tax money, that's the services we're going to be providing. If we do want to spend a little bit more on our tax bill, which again, we outlined in all that last override, it wasn't going to be that much more per household to do so, then we would have better services to provide. We'd have better education to provide our children, and town as a whole would be a lot better off. So at some point in time, we'll be entertaining that conversation. Don't think it'll be in the immediate future. Don't know if it'll even be into the next fiscal year, but it's something that we all as a town have to contemplate to bring the town to a level where it needs to be. And, you know, it's not that I want to pay more taxes, or I know any of you want to pay more taxes, but it's just the fiscal reality of running a town. And we choose how we run the town, we choose what services we want to have in the town, and if we want to spend a little bit more, then we'll be able to provide the services that the town needs and give our kids the education that they need. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ellenberg?
Yes, we do have a tough budget, and I want to compliment our town manager and the financial services who have worked on this. It's a very, very difficult budget. With regard to the revenue side, I would really like if the golf course contract could be reviewed, because I believe, having looked at the contract a while ago, if they reach a threshold above a certain amount, revenue to the town increases. So I would like that to be checked. I also want to thank the Hansons for putting their land into conservation. That was wonderful, wonderful. And I enjoyed myself there and hearing all the stories that were told about the farm. And last thing is, I hope to see a good turnout on cleanup day in the town. Volunteers wanted, and together we can try to make our town beautiful by getting the litter up off of the streets and so forth. So hope to see a good turnout. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy?
I also want to thank the town manager and staff, Lori, in your department for putting together the budget. I know this was a difficult decision. I know we came in a couple million behind, and on top of that, we have the schools factored into this. So I just want to say thank you for putting all the work in on this. I can echo other councilors' comments, but to just save time, and because we have a state rep here, our Chapter 90 money that the towns get is not enough. The Chapter 70 money we get for the schools is not enough. The district busing that the state forces us to pay for is not enough. It is not reimbursed. It is an unfunded mandate. And the last one I'll say is the pilot money that we get in this town for the amount of state facilities that we have specifically in Bridgewater is laughably low. And the state has recognized these for years as being underfunded. So I know people don't want to see their property taxes raised, but pay attention, please, over the next few weeks and coming months as to what the state is choosing to fund. Because it's not us, it's other things. And it's been like this for years, and it's extremely frustrating. So that's all I got for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President McGrath.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you, Justin, and your team for all the work you've done, even though it was one of the most depressing town council meetings I've ever had. And I want to ask the rep, too, when you go back, can you see if we can get that millionaire tax to come to education and not for other things that it's not supposed to be used for? Thank you.
Thank you. As for myself, Sean took a lot of my comments, but you missed one, unrestricted general government aid. Let's look into that as well. Obviously not keeping up with inflation. We do need to be paying attention, as Councillor Kennedy said, to what our state is deciding to fund, and it's not our local communities. The Perfect Storm report by the MMA last year, read it. Everybody should read it. Municipalities like our community are being set aside, and we are being ignored, and our tax dollars are not going to the services that we deserve to get. And the bill is now being put on our taxpayers because, as it's been made very clear, 80% of our budget comes from property taxes. So it puts us in a very, very precarious position. That being said, I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of you all this weekend at the town cleanup, those 3 locations, 10 a.m. on Saturday. And that is all I have for this evening. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Before Janet goes, tell her about the super website and the notification thing that we have. All right?